Hello, patrons. It is Tuesday, July 24th, and this is your Cup of Jones. Hopefully it sounds okay. We're a little warm last week, so drop the levels. So we're a little bit quieter, and I'm going to try to keep my distance from this mic. I got very excited because we have brand new mics. Or not brand new mics, but new mic pop filters, or pop screens, if you will. And so I think I got a little overzealous. I got a little too close. So I'm just going to be chill for Cup of Jones. I'm just going to be back here for Cup of Jones. Hey, everybody. We also didn't have a Cup of Jones last week because something happened that doesn't usually happen, and that was, it was Monday night, and I was looking at all the stuff I had to do, and I was like, I haven't even started Cup of Jones yet. I don't think I'm going to be ready for Cup of Jones. We had the post up. We had a lot of great questions and comments, and so I posted another post saying that I was going to see you all next week after Comic-Con, and here I am the Tuesday after Comic-Con, and I'm also extremely busy. I'm going to be running off. We're wrapping up today at a 2 hours on the nose. At noon, I have to go because I got to go to a preview event. We also have people coming in. They're going to shoot a show right after I am done, and so I'm out. So we probably won't get to personal questions. Not going to have an editorial today. I'll talk a brief bit about Comic-Con at the top here. Apologies for not having a Cup of Jones next week. But thank you to people. A couple people left questions or comments on that post from last week where I said I wasn't going to be doing a show. And so I've added those to the mix here. Yeah, I wish it was a Red Dead preview event. That would be fantastic. 'Tis not. But lots of great stuff to talk about, along with, of course, quite good questions and comments. We had a fantastic meeting yesterday. All the allies got together. We talked about, of course, what we're going to be shooting and streaming in the month of August, but specifically what our new goals are going to be, potential new reward tiers. We had some of the allies think up some fun ideas for reward tiers, and our next waves of exclusive shows. So if you missed it, and for that reason has wrapped up the first season. Will it be the only season? Only time will tell. Of And For That Reason, 6 episodes. All of you that are watching this can go check it out because it is an exclusive show available exclusively to patrons of Easy Allies. And apologies that we were not immediately following up, and for that reason, with more exclusive shows. We have more exclusive shows planned. We just wanted to prioritize what sounded the most interesting, what was viable for us to do before the end of 2018. And so as we get closer to working on those shows, not only will you get more information on the next round of exclusive shows, the next exclusive show that we're going to be having here at patreon.com/easyallies, but then hopefully before that ends, we'll be able to communicate what the next shows down the road will be so that we don't wrap up our fun exclusive show, get all of you incentivized to be patrons here at Easy Allies, and then not deliver news on what the next one will be. Maybe we were just so proud of ourselves for getting And For That Reason done and so happy with how it turned out that we forgot that we should probably get some more lined up. But we had some fun ideas for exclusive shows. I'm excited to put some of that stuff together or creatively start to workshop some of those projects. Excited more about our goals. And again, it's going to take a little bit of time for us to finalize these. I'm not here today to be like, ta-da, here are our new goals. We're going to be doing that sometime in August. And I'm excited because it's not only new types of shows that we can do here at Easy Allies, but some of those goals really represent how different it's going to be to get a studio, how different, just in the same way as a studio changed us, kind of looking at what else could change Easy Allies, what else could be different about this group, about this channel, about this production studio moving forward. Like I said, in the same way that a studio would mean. But there was one piece of news that I was excited to talk to you about last week that I didn't get a chance to because I didn't stream. Toshigami posted in chat, thank you. We are at 50,274 so far. I believe we are at 7,720 something patrons. So we have been higher on the Patreon before, but we have, I believe that is a record number of patrons. So thank you so much. If people are new, if this is your first Cup of Jones, welcome to Easy Allies. I try to do this once a week, but I don't always get to. Before last week's episode, we created our own bank account, which is not the most exciting news. It's not something I can really tangibly deliver to you in the form of anything else other than that announcement, but The thing that's really exciting about that is I financially kind of took over some of the responsibilities early on for Easy Allies, and it was just so easy to coast doing that, you know, well, we already have this set up, so let's just focus on more immediate concerns. And it's something that admittedly I put off for a long time, but Easy Allies now is its own company, and Easy Allies is now its own financial institution. So again, that's not a very that's not like fireworks going off announcement, but for me personally, that's a really huge step and kind of represents some of the big changes, like some of the big boy pants that we're putting on here at Easy Allies, and I'm really excited about that. So it's just kind of neat to think of this thing that we've all created, that you all have donated so much time and attention, and of course finances to, and to have it really become its own entity. This is kind of its own ship steering itself now, and we will see how far we can take it. Like I said, I went to Comic-Con this past weekend. I had a wonderful time. My highlight was meeting Mr. Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman from Batman the Animated Series and the Arkham trilogy, and all of the other various appearances he has done as the Dark Knight. And I have been around him before, but I've never actually had a conversation with him. Got to ask him some fun questions. Other than that, and I gotta be honest, folks, video games are a little bit bleak at Comic-Con. Square Enix does a good show, Capcom does a good show, and Nintendo does a good show. Those are probably my three favorite publishers that are at Comic-Con. They had about the same sized booths that they did last year. Xbox was just purely selling merchandise this year. There were no Xbox games, to my knowledge, that were available to play on the show floor. You could buy t-shirts if you wanted to from Xbox, but I haven't washed my hand. I didn't get to actually shake his hand. I posted a picture that was, I realized after the fact, I was like, that was a little disingenuous. I posted a picture of Kevin Conroy being interviewed, and you can see a hand holding a microphone in front of him that has like a weird little band on it or something. That's not me. That's just him interviewing another property. After I did the interview, I was like, I should probably get a picture of him. I should have maybe got a picture of him looking into my camera, but getting back to Comic-Con, there were the Comic-Con gaming presence seems to dwindle every year. There were fun panels. I did not have time to attend any of those panels, so the information that you got from the Marvel panel or the Lego DC Supervillains panel or any of those other fun panels was the same information that I got, because I did not get to go to any of those. My wonderful wife Amanda is in The Death of Superman, which premiered. She is also in a television show that is on True TV right now. You can just go to like iTunes or something and buy the season or buy episodes from Bobcat Goldthwait called Misfits and Monsters. And she is in episode 4. It is currently 2 episodes in, so you have time to get prepared for Amanda's debut in the show. And she is doing some other fun stuff. Obviously, we ran around with Box Peak stickers, and of course, we're spreading the gospel of Easy Allies. But she had a lot of fun things to promote, and as such was invited and got into a lot of fun parties and events, and so I just kind of tagged along with Amanda and went to a lot of the fun stuff that she was doing. So it was fun to kind of kick back and not necessarily be super game focused, but at the same time, sometimes they sneak in with some new interesting things. I remember at last Comic-Con, I went to a private appointment at a hotel room just to sit down with the staff of Marvel vs. Capcom Ultimate, and got to play like an hour and a half straight of just one-on-one matches in Marvel vs. Capcom Ultimate. And that was really great because that was available at E3, but I didn't really have a lot of time to play that. Whereas this year, almost every game I turned around and looked at, it's like I'd already played it. Shadow the Tomb Raider had an event. It was the same preview that I'd already played and seen played several times, and talked to other people that had played several times. Resident Evil 2 was there, same demo that I'd already played, and I would have had less time with it than I had at E3. Mega Man was there. We've kind of already talked a lot about that, and I'm not the big Mega Man aficionado. A lot of Square Enix titles I'd already played. Smash Brothers was there, and I did get to play a little bit more Smash Brothers, but I had already played that at E3. And there was a bunch of new Nintendo stuff. Overcooked 2 was there. I'd already played that at E3. So like, it was just kind of that same narrative over and over again. And so Damiani and I, the two allies that spent the most time at Comic-Con, debated on doing some kind of post-Comic-Con wrap-up, but there just wasn't really a ton of stuff to talk about. He went to a lot more panels, and he's going to be talking about some of the Nintendo stuff on an upcoming episode of Friend Code. And if I pop into the group stream tonight before it's too late, I might share some fun stories and stuff like that. Went to some fun parties, met some fun celebrities, but nothing necessarily game related, and nothing that I'm going to really tell you right now to take up too much time in the intro. August is coming up. This is the last Cup of Jones in the month of July. We are above 50K, fingers crossed. You deserve to know the advancements that we have made from our studio search. We have discussed a lot of stuff internally about specifically what we want, areas that we would be happy with. There was a back and forth search to get a commercial real estate agent and find somebody that financially really fit into us, and someone that I at least had a friend that had worked with that person before. And so we have now secured a commercial real estate agent. That person has all of our particulars, and the search has begun for a studio. Again, that search will potentially be halted temporarily in the month of August if we don't hit that 50K level, but all that remains to, continue moving forward in the process of getting a studio is literally just hitting a button, sending an email, and being like, yes, go search. I will now pay that person, and we will do that moving forward. But our Patreon is extremely successful right now, and a lot of those resources are going into production expenses for the stream that we're going to do tomorrow, which I'll get to in a second. Easy Living, which is coming up. Potentially sending one or two of our allies up to PAX, which we're kind of debating whether we're going to be hitting PAX West. And who's going to be going up and what days we're going to be up there. So stay tuned. We'll have more information about that. But do not fear any boost in Patreon numbers, any boost in finances that we get here at Easy Allies. All of that goes into the production. All of that goes into more stuff. Again, that we are producing, like I just said, more exclusive shows coming up in the vein of And For That Reason. And one thing that I'm excited about, the stuff that we came up with to follow And For That Reason in the exclusive show timeline, is they're very different from And For That Reason. And I gave myself a little pat on the back because I had a bunch of ideas and all the allies liked them. So I'm excited to be producing a lot of that stuff. But yeah, as I mentioned very briefly, Game Day 2018, EZA Game Day 2018 starts tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific time and goes until Thursday, 6 p.m. Pacific time. What day is what? Tomorrow is Wednesday, starts at 6, ends Thursday at 6. This is a 24-hour live stream we're going to be doing here in the garage, here on the EZA stage. And we are going to be doing it at like a relay. The stream is going to start with myself, Ian Hink, and Don Casanova. I'm going to start by playing 2 hours of The Crew 2, running around showing you some of my favorite parts of the map, doing some missions that I haven't completed yet. And then Ian's going to play a game, Don's going to play a game. I believe he's going to play Jurassic World Evolution, so it's going to be fun to experience that, just kind of kick back and watch Don either show us the progress of the park that he has built or maybe a startup park from scratch. And then other allies are going to come in and bring their games and their consoles, and then other allies are going to come in on top of them. So you're basically going to see new allies come in, old allies go out, and then possibly some of them returning. I will not be returning for the end of Game Day 2018 because I will be going to another preview event on Wednesday. Tonight I'm shooting a Comic-Con trailer Jones. We're going to be probably scoring the trailers from Aquaman, Shazam, and Godzilla. I did not like that Aquaman trailer. I think that movie looks interesting and fun, but I don't like that trailer. And so I'm excited to score that specifically. A lot of people were kind of hit or miss on the Shazam trailer, and that Godzilla trailer is hot. So I definitely want to talk about that, and I'm curious what Brad Ellis and Kyle Bossman will be joining me for that. And so we'll be shooting a Comic-Con trailer Jones, and then I got to do producer credits tonight, so I will be getting very little sleep tonight. And I don't have time to stock the fridge, so the allies are going to probably run out of San Pelli really quick. And Easy Living comes up on August 17th. We also figured out the schedule for that. We will be hopefully posting that very soon. There could be some fun surprises coming up there, depending on if we're able to make some things happen. But I'm looking forward to giving you the wonderful 50-hour live stream that we did last year, but obviously changing it up and doing things a little bit differently. So we got our 24-hour stream starting tomorrow. We got our 50-hour stream starting in about 2 or 3 weeks. We got more events coming up. This fall is going to be absolutely huge for reviews, and so I'm very excited, but a lot of crazy things are happening, and excuse me if I'm a little bewildered because I had a big Comic-Con, and I'm also, one of the things that I just forget every time I go to Comic-Con is you're screaming so much of the time because it's loud on the show floor, it's loud on the street, it's loud at night just walking around, and when you go to these parties, I know boo-hoo, but like I went to these parties with Amanda, and like I would bump into somebody, say like Trisha Hirschberger at the Nerdist party, and like, oh, Trisha, how are you doing? Like, I'm great. How's your kid? Great. You know, just like, and then at the end of the day, I had to record Crew 2 VO when I came back. It was like, my voice is going. So 1 hour and 40 minutes is the amount of time I have to go through as many questions as possible. As always, we will start with business. But let me see if there's anything I missed in chat. Not really seeing Bloodworth come up. He usually drops a comment or two. But, a little bit sleepy. And I'm trying to just fill every single last moment of time that I have with Octopath Traveler. Ben Moore is wrapping it up right now. You can expect a review from him as soon as possible. But I want to record a spoiler mode with him that we wanted to do, have be our gaming based spoiler mode for the month of July, but it looks like it'll probably happen in August because I'm in it, sorry, I tried. I definitely put some things off to try to like cram as much of Octopath into my schedule as I could, and I played as much of it in Comic-Con. I took a train down to San Diego and a train back, and I played it like the whole way down and the whole way back, and I really like it, and I was in there a little earlier. Thank you, Blood. Always good to have you there. So, yeah, Octopath review soon, shortly after Octopath spoiler mode with myself and Ben Moore. Very excited to get to the end of that. Hey, Brandon, this is where you should put the time code for feedback for business. Here we go. Ulf himself, would you ever consider skipping questions on Cup of Jones that have been answered a lot? I'm specifically thinking of the will Final Bossman ever come back question. Kyle has made his stance on a Final Bossman successor clear on several occasions, and you have also talked about it on many episodes of Cup of Jones. I feel that because you keep humoring the question, it keeps getting asked. Yeah, that is part of the next evolution of Cup of Jones. If you are a fan of Cup of Jones, if you've been around since the very first episode, you know how this show has evolved over time, and I think that is one of the big evolutions moving on, is switching to more comments on Patreon. And so if you ask a question, then you watch the show and you're like, hey, he didn't answer that, go back to that Patreon post. You'll probably see either just a like from me identifying that, yeah, I saw that, or you will see a reply saying, a lot of people asked this. You can go back to an old episode and get the answer, or you can ask Kyle directly. But yeah, I need to start consolidating questions. I had a super long, page-long question, which I actually trimmed a lot of it out. And so sometimes I do some editing so that I can get to the point, and then if you actually need like the entire bit of information. And apologies if there's something that I cut out, but just really try to keep, if you're on your like 8th sentence, that post is a little intense. So I only have time really to get specifically to the comment and the response. Amanda Kruger, is an annual subscription to Easy Allies a la Giant Bomb a possibility? It is not, but I love this idea. I'm a new patron and I want to continue my patronage, but monthly fees of any kind give me anxiety. I feel you. If possible, I would rather pay you $360 for the year, $30 times 12 months, and not think about it again. Yeah, I wonder if one of the main problems, first of all, this just doesn't exist on Patreon. It'd be fun if it did, but one of the things that Giant Bomb can guarantee is a lot of their pricing structure is going to stay the same, where Patreon changes, they might change pricing structures. The worth of one thing one month might be different another month depending on policy changes at Patreon, and our goals might change. So if you were to pay 30, so much money for a certain goal, and then we were to move that goal up or move that goal down or remove it entirely, then that would change your rewards depending on what you got. And so I'd be nervous for people paying up front for something that they might not get down the road. One of my favorite things about Giant Bomb, and I think one of the most impressive things about the company, is their website is amazing. Their games library powers a lot of other channels, and their pricing structure was really revolutionary at the time, and really, I think, is still very forward-thinking when it comes to being independent and having your own financial system. We do not have that. We, could not afford to build something like that, and have really leaned into Patreon to set up their specific pricing structure, but this would be something that would be great if they added down the road, and apologies that I don't have a more constructive answer than that, but I do love that idea. That is food for thought. Thank you. Brandon Kagan, since the new desk seems like such a drastic improvement, not this desk, the desk that I showed you last week that all of our equipment is sitting on, and hindsight being 2020, it surprises me that something had to happen to force an upgrade that now seems like, purely from an outsider's perspective who doesn't see said desk in content, in the content, it needed to have happened for a while. In your opinion, is there anything around the garage you can see should be upgraded while the wait for consistent studio funding continues, or is EZA now too close to a move to commit to anything without seeing and being in the new space? Proactive, not reactive. Yeah, you name it, man. There's all sorts of stuff. Everywhere I look, I see things that we need to buy. Our fridge makes funny noises. This was not a fridge we purchased for Easy Allies. This is our old fridge. We got a new fridge when we remodeled the house. We put the old fridge out here in the garage. It's nice to have some extra beverages if you have a party. It's fun to like throw beer in there. And we've been using it to store all of the San Pellegrino and Coke and Red Bull that we, and the water and so on that we consume for Easy Allies. One of those days that fridge is going to break. I'm waiting until it does. I'm not going to invest your hard-earned money on a fridge if we don't need it. And yeah, there are that TV, my old TV, the TV that we have over there is a new TV, and I use my TV as a computer monitor now. That's probably going to die pretty soon. I need a new arm for the microphone in the booth. I've been kind of jerry-rigging a thing when I do VO, because again, you don't hear it any different. So I think one of the things why it might seem frustrating to look at us fix stuff and just kind of like jerry-rig something for the time being, and then when that doesn't work, actually go out and make that investment. But a lot of that is how EZA has operated and thrived for going on 2.5 years now, because we really try to prioritize what the squeaky wheel that needs the most grease. What is the thing that we definitely want to focus our resources and time on, and what can be okay for a couple months. Case in point, EasyAllies.com. I mean, that's something that I want to spend thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on. I want to have all sorts of fun pages. I want to have crazy interactivity. I want to have games that you can play on the website. Like, I have so many ideas, and we've gotten so many great suggestions over the years from our community over things that we can add to the website. And it just hasn't seemed like that kind of, it seems like the kind of thing that will put a smile on people's faces but will not affect our bottom line. And there are so many more things that we can spend money on that will make things easier. Obviously, treating our equipment well and not having the monitors be tipped over onto the desk after the desk broke. If you're curious about this whole desk conversation we're having right now, go to it was 2 weeks ago, I believe it was July 10th was the last episode of Cup of Jones, and you can see me throw up a screenshot, a photograph that I took, a screenshot from life of the new desk that we got. That's very cool. So there you go. Tax Zero. My question suggestion this week is wondering if you and the Allies have ever considered having a Patreon exclusive video game book club of sorts, not to be confused with Blood Pack's book club format. You'd regularly announce a game that both the Allies and the EZA community would try to beat together, because over time I've realized, especially during Hall of Greats and GOTY discussions, that there are specific tentpole games that one or two of you feel very passionate about but no one else has played. Having this regular video game book club would not only help catch up the other Allies, but could substitute older absent shows like Brandon Plays Pokemon, where in-depth discussion took place over older games with a modern outlook. Spoiler mode already exists as well, so if there was a particular new game everyone wanted to discuss, you could maybe integrate said video game book club into that. Basically, a book club was my best idea at bringing back aspects of Brandon Plays Pokemon. This is not the only question about Brandon Plays Pokemon, FYI. Zelda talk and some of the one-off analytical discussions you all have had, while also maybe creating a more fulfilled dialogue on games not everyone is familiar with on the team. The book club may be a lot to ask, but I would absolutely tune into those 2-hour event discussions on Mega Man Legends and SimCity 4. I think the main thing standing in the way of this is time. I'm sure a lot of us would love to be involved. One of my favorite things in the world is seeing the eyes of Ben Moore light up when you tell him you're going to play a game that he's also going to play. Like, really? Like, I told him I can't promise to be done by the time we do any kind of a spoiler mode or gaming discussion. If the guys want to get together and talk about Dragon Quest XI after they're all done finishing it, I am like devouring Octopath Traveler. I see notes from Octopath Traveler on social media. People are like, hey, did you see this cave? Know this thing? I'm like, I didn't, because I'm trying to finish this game. Like, I'm just playing like so fast. Like, the moment my least leveled character hits that level requirement for a mission, I just go and do it. So I'm planning to take my time with Dragon Quest XI, but there are those rare opportunities where one of us is excited about something and so other people have time to do it. The problem about setting up a show like this is if it was going to happen at any regular interval, we cannot control what events happen. We cannot control what other stuff is announced or what other projects people are going to be working on ahead of time, months in advance. And so it is extremely rare that more than a handful of us get a chance to play a game at the same time. I know a lot of us are excited about Red Dead Redemption, but like, I don't know how many people are actually going to be playing Red Dead Redemption 2 when I'm playing it right when that game comes out. And so sometimes you hope for those things to happen, but there's just not enough time. And so the idea of promising that, of setting up a book club and then forcing like a whole group of allies to play something, have them then be stressed to add that massive game onto something else that they're doing. Because I think a book club like this, like you said, Brand plays Pokemon. That's an RPG. That was a very lengthy gameplay experience for me to get through all of that stuff. It was a priority because Kyle and I were very excited about that show. But I think adding another 30, 40-hour game on top of the production schedule of some of the allies would break them. So I do like that idea. I will consider it, but I think time is the biggest thing right now. That would be fun. There's a lot of games that I would love for all of the allies to all play at the same time. Dreams, great example. I'd love to do a big book club on Dreams, but I can't. I don't think it would make Easy Allies better to force all of the other allies to play Dreams. John White, would you ever consider a behind-the-scenes tier for patrons? This tier could offer exclusive content, such as blooper reels for the Busted Trifecta, and for that reason, maybe a brief video into how Box Peak is filmed and edited, or a special stream on the deliberations for a future top 10 list. This tier could be modified as new shows wrap up or introduced. I think a lot of us here love the bonus bits, and maybe there's a way to use them to drive more support to the Patreon. That's fun. That didn't come up in the meeting, but, again, I think it's just a matter of time right now, like really being able to invest. Not only are we going to shoot a thing, but we're going to shoot a thing showing us shooting the thing. So, but I will keep that in mind, and again, the only way to know the demand for something like that is to actually do it. I know you're interested, but I don't know how interested a lot of new people who discover us would be to see a lot of that behind-the-scenes stuff. And the question, again, is being consistent, making that something that we know that we can do, and not something where we all kind of like, oh, wait, that's right, can somebody else hold this camera because we gotta shoot this thing behind the scenes. Probably one of our biggest regrets is not recording video of us recording the rolls for Box Peak. Looking back, that would have been great to have a behind-the-scenes thing. And Kyle has done a little bit of instructional videos on how he, or instructional posts at least, blogs about how he puts Box Peak together. Julian, what do you think about decorating the new studio to look identical to your garage? Not identical. Like what they do in Wayne's World. We have had Wayne's World come up. This is an example of maybe a question that I could have just replied to on Patreon, but one of the big things about this studio is we need to look at it and figure out if it's charming enough for our set to be built into it. So is this something where we have just really blank walls, and so we actually want to build a set? We actually want to like build walls in front of the walls, that those will be the set? Or is this something that maybe the building has kind of an old fun craftsman vibe to it, and maybe we want to build the set actually into the existing structure? We don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't go for a garage feel. I would go for a comfortable feel. To some people, that might mean garage. To me, it just means more comfortable. I would want this to be someplace that you can tell we're not trying to set ourselves up like Sports Center. It's not just all like TV monitors and flashy like glass shiny paneling. It's not like a J.J. Abrams movie. Like I definitely want it to be a little bit more grounded and down to earth, but we'll see what place we get. Ibrahim Sozer, how can you say you have no ideas? Bring back Trailer Academy. That would be great. That would be great. That required me to play a game from start to finish, which was basically the same as a review, and it did way less numbers than review. I know numbers aren't necessarily the most important thing now that we are Easy Allies, but And Trailer Academy is something that I have thought about doing. I stopped doing Trailer Academy and I stopped doing Trailer Jones or Trailer Score or Let's All Go to the Trailers, whatever you want to call it. I have got back to doing that. We are scoring trailers again now, so maybe one day we'll get back to criticizing and educating people on trailers. But thank you, Ebo Show, that's saying that Trailer Academy is a good idea. But again, Trailer Academy is an idea I had a long time ago, so I haven't had a good idea in a while. Stefan Bean, my experience 2 weeks ago, did send in a question. So this is a legitimate Cup of Jones critique, and I'm ready for it. Did send in a question a Cup of Jones days before the show. Question was not mentioned during the show. This happens. I don't know why. I just mentally just fly right by questions sometimes. So if I skip something, apologies. If I skip something, let me know. I have no problem answering 2 questions from you in the following episode. I watched the entire show again because I often listen to Cup of Jones while working on something and could have missed your answer. Timestamps with questions would have prevented this because I would have seen that the question was not in the episode. My experience 1 week ago, I offered to develop a custom software. My experience 1 week ago, I offered to develop a custom software for free that manages questions and answers to generate timestamps for you after the show without expanding your workload. I watched Cup of Jones and was prepared you for saying, and for that reason, I'm out, but it wasn't mentioned. This was something I honestly didn't expect. I watched the episode again to be sure the post was not moved to personal questions or the order of the questions posts was changed. Timestamps would have prevented this too. My questions this week: did you see my offer? Are you interested? Yeah, I did see your offer, Stefan. I'm sorry. I think I favorited it and I didn't answer it because, and this might seem super nitpicky, but again, for people at home, just to help me understand the difference between comments and questions. I don't believe there was a question in your post. I think when you listed, you were like, I'm capable of making this type of technology and I think Cup of Jones would benefit from it. And I was like, cool, thanks. You know, like, that's not necessarily something that I want to implement right away, but again, just something at the end where like, would you be interested in something like this? That does sound interesting. No matter what, no matter how much functionality that adds to Cup of Jones on the back end, no matter how much that clarifies what questions are in each episode and helps people understand more about the show, it's got to be an extra step. There's no way that's not an extra step. And right now, I just don't have time for any extra step leading up to Cup of Jones. I barely have time to copy and edit questions into a format that I can read it just directly on the show, and organize it in a way where business questions are over here, personal questions are over here. I would basically then have to do that and then individually have to take all of those questions and then input that into some kind of XML or whatever system that you were talking about setting up. Learn from you basically how that works. Even if and you were saying you were going to set up free of charge, which is incredibly generous, but I would have to learn how that works. So I'd have to also take the time to meet with you at some point, figure out how that works, get used to how it works, troubleshoot any potential errors on my part in the code, whatever. And so where it sounds like this just would streamline the process, would make it so much easier. It would take a lot of work to get to that point where it would be easier. So I'm not saying that that's not something I would not want to do down the road. That sounds very exciting. And again, as I was talking about advancements that we want to make to easyallies.com, I would love for Cup of Jones to have like the questions pop up in text and to have somebody back there on the switcher that was helping me with the episode, to free up my schedule a little bit more and make it more manageable so that I don't skip episodes like I did last week. There's still more improvements we can make in the show, no question. And you have enticed me. As always, I think business propositions like that are best done via email, Brandon@easyallies.com, instead of discussing openly here on the show. And I think that's one of the other reasons why I didn't get into it, was that seemed like an official, business request. And so I wanted to thank you for that and just kind of mull it over, but it didn't seem like a way to specifically phrase that or phrase a answer to that comment in last week's episode. But more importantly, the week before that, sorry for missing your question, man. That's I hate it when I do that. And thank you for the offer. I don't want it to seem like I'm not grateful, because that would be awesome if we could get that up and running. Andy Zolkeefly, why didn't you guys cover the story of the announcement of a new console from Intellivision, as well as the news that Tommy Tallarico has become president of Intellivision? I watched the recent interview Vic Lucas did with Tommy, and it was more interesting than whatever was happening in E3. I don't know about that, Andy, but I appreciate your interest. Isn't something that is considered different than the usual news we always hear? Oh, isn't this something that is considered different from the usual news we always hear from E3? That is true. I don't really get incredibly excited. Here's the problem with the Intellivision. We have and this might have changed since, but it was why I just kind of ignored and almost kind of chuckled at a lot of the announcements that were coming out from it. We have no idea what it is. All they said is they were making a new console, and like, that's not news. That, like, yeah, just let me know what it is. Like, let me know what you're going to do, and what games are going to be on it, and when it's going to come out, and how much this is going to be, and where I'm going to be able to get it, and like, I need details for us to talk about it. And so I think if there's like a news story that you hear and then you see the Easy Allies podcast and you're like, why didn't they talk about it? It's because the conversation would last 30 seconds. It would be like, hey, did you hear Tommy Tallarico was appointed the president of Intellivision? Like, yeah, can't wait to find out what that console is going to be. Yeah, it could be really interesting. moving on to the next topic. So like, we just don't want to like have 50 timestamps of just 1 minute conversations in the Easy Allies podcast. We really want to try to find those bits that will be a lengthy conversation that can possibly fill many different, aspects. I love that Vic sat down with him because Vic loved Vic Lucas. Was a big fan of Electric Playground in the early days, and still am, but watched a lot of Electric Playground back in the early days of Game Trailers when we were forming that site, even before Game Trailers started. And remember seeing Tommy, and love Tommy because love Video Games Live, love a lot of the work that he's done in composing, and am curious to see more information about the Intellivision. But we were just kind of waiting for the big announcement to happen where we actually found out what was happening with the console, and then we could have the conversation about Tommy being placed as a president, about all the announcements leading up to that announcement. We didn't want to like talk about Intellivision and then talk about Intellivision again. So I think that's why that didn't come up. And Tommy being the head of Intellivision is not, in my opinion, more interesting than other stuff that was happening at E3. But I love that you think so, and that is something different. There are lots of things that are different. Man, Andy, if you knew the amount of emails that we got, the emails that I got before Comic-Con, the emails that we got before E3 of just like everyone screaming that at us. This thing that I'm telling you about right now is different than a lot of the things happening in this industry. And it's like, you're correct, but there's only so many things that we can talk about. There were some weird details in the Intellivision that came out a bit later. No 3D games, only E-rated games targeting the Wii audience that didn't keep buying games, says Daniel Bloodworth in the chat. Thank you for the deets. Anthony Stevens, I'm curious to find out how you decide who reviews each game, please. Is it done via genre specialization, like one person gets all the fighting games or racing games, for example, interest in a series IP, or done by potluck? Considering there are 5 reviewers on your team, there are 6. Please correct me if I'm mistaken. It's interesting to hear, and Anthony had this question answered for him. I just wanted to bring it up in case people were curious on the episode. I was the 6th ally that reviews games that he forgot, which is understandable. I don't review games that often. It's interesting to hear the thought process behind the scenes, considering one of the things I enjoy is the honesty showcased when expressing things that feel good and not so good about the game's content in general, even if I don't necessarily agree with opinions expressed. First come, first serve is how that works, and somebody jumped in the comments and answered that for Anthony, but in case all of you don't know, yeah, I review all of the games, says Tokyo Slim. No. We figure that out. People can start talking about stuff. Again, I've been talking about Spider-Man all year, so and Red Dead, of course. The Allies knew that I had those 2 games in my crosshairs, but we talk about stuff, and then when it actually is the month before and we're planning the next month, that's actually when we throw out, okay, who's interested in this game? We can review this, or are we going to put this in an episode of Easy Update? Is this going to be a stream? Is this a tournament? Like, what should we do with this game? And who's going to cover it and in what way? And we basically throw that out as a general question and then wait for somebody to raise their hand. If nobody does, then we start to kind of workshop other fun things we could possibly do with it. But we try to let people work on projects they want to work on, and it's very, very rare that like myself or Daniel Bloodworth will make like an executive decision on something. It's usually person A wants to work on a game, person B also does, but they just tell person A, you can do it. And like that's usually how the conversation goes. Reagan Raiden, I was thinking about Eorzean allies today and how much I would love to see some kind of thing done similarly to that for the upcoming World of Warcraft expansion Battle for Azeroth. I know Brad Huber and most likely Ben will be diving back in when it launches in the middle of next month, and I would absolutely love if there was some kind of iteration of what was done with Final Fantasy XIV, with the new WoW expansion, with you thrown into the mix as well. Not gonna happen, but thank you. Not that I wouldn't love Battle for Azeroth, not that I wouldn't love getting paid full-time just to play World of Warcraft. That sounds like an absolute dream, but sadly not the way this business is set up right now. Maybe we can get to that point someday. That's the goal. Maybe I can just kick back and that's it. It's like, oh, is somebody else streaming? Well, back to Jones playing MMOs. Even though I know you probably won't be able to because there's simply too many games out there and not enough time, and Warcraft asks for a lot of time. Mr. Brad Ellis is currently signed on to review Battle for Azeroth. I do not know how much he's going to be streaming that or how much he's going to be doing that live for our Twitch audience. And I don't know if anyone else is going to be able to join him and how often that will happen. I know Damiani was the ringleader in the 14 operation, so it would be weird not having a knowledgeable lead for Warcraft, but maybe that could make it more interesting. The idea of seeing you and everyone else chuckle-heading around in Azeroth sounds as jolly as it can get. That does sound pretty great, I gotta admit. As much as I'm going to just kind of slip onto the next question after this, Reagan, I would watch that. I would love that. I would love to play that. At least until Huber gets the bloodlust in him and spots another player to slay for the Horde. Just throwing my interest out there, as WoW is my game of choice more often than anything else these days. The idea of seeing you guys play it in any forum is a dream. Noted. Kerbu, what I'm proposing to you is a multimedia enhanced in-depth discussion show. It would cover any specific little aspects of a game a panel of allies deem worthy of taking a deep dive on, specifically for topics that would feel out of place or constrained in any other show or stream. Soundtrack and score appreciation of a game, series, or a specific composer make for an obvious start, potential YouTube and Twitch copyright issues aside. An ally or two could create an impassioned dissection of a lengthy, dense game's noteworthy merits that they can otherwise not get other allies to audience members to devote the time to, one that's too dense to cram into a Hall of Greats plea. A panel could bring in 90s television advertisements for games to mock, celebrate, or compare to modern ones. Kyle could once and for all illustrate his take on A Link to the Past's art style against an equally armed opponent. Game interfaces, boss fights, translations, art and sound design, lore, maps, cutscene directions, secrets, any number of memorable moments and building blocks from decades of gaming to savor or shun over a nice, focused discussion. So basically meaning Frame Trap now currently exists as an extended discussion that we don't necessarily get to have in a clean way on our group streams or in a non-business way as we tend to focus on in the Easy Allies podcast. But what Kerbu is suggesting here is say I just want to talk about open world games. That necessarily wouldn't be a specific Frame Trap discussion. So they're pitching what if we had a show where I would just sit down and be like, here's why I like open world games, here's why I think more games should go open world, here's franchises that I think should be open world now, Splinter Cell, etc. And see what the other panelists think. I think this is great. I think this is something we could potentially could move on to once we get the studio. I would love to have a debate show. I would love to build podiums. That's one of the things I want to do when we get to the studio. It might take a while to realize, but I would love to actually have like a podium so that we could have that set up for like GOTY discussions and for specifically Hall of Greats, so somebody could put their notes and like step into a podium. Hello, everyone. I would love that, and that I think kind of fits into brainstorming for that show. So I will add that idea to that kind of cloud of creative ideas that hopefully we can get to one day. But had another thought there, totally lost it, gotta move on. But thank you for the suggestion, Kerbu, and not only the suggestion of the show, but suggestions of topics that we could bring up. Icon Master, you expressed disappointment about the watch counts dipping on Brandon Plays Pokemon over time. To me, that seems like residual thinking from game trailers. It is. Of course, big hit counts feel good, but if the feedback from patrons is, we loved it, and I loved it, isn't that the real metric? Follow-up question, have you considered breaking any additional furniture? Of course. I'd love to break some stuff. Let's break some stuff. Yes, that is a metric. The love of our allies of something. People loved Easy Anime. People loved The Objective, which was on the podcast. People loved, and for that reason, we only did a limited run of that. At some point, we have to say no to things that people love that they want us to do. People love Trailer Academy. Like, there are things we could do that people would enjoy, but it's the question of... we did both of those Pokemon shows because we wanted to do them, period. Where the idea presents itself to do more of them again, to create more of an outreach for Easy Allies. And so it's not only like looking at the performance of something after the fact, but thinking about, is this something we're doing because it's good for us, it's a pill we need to swallow, or is this something we're doing just because we want to do this? And so we initially didn't do Brandon Plays Pokemon because it was going to be a huge hit. We did it because I wanted to play Pokemon. And so people are like, you should do these other things because that was such a big hit. And now we're like, well, okay, now we're not going to do a Brandon Plays Pokemon variant because we really want to do it. We're going to do it because our audience wants it and because the other thing kind of exploded. And so, again, it's sticky where it's like, are we doing this because we really want to do it? And you're going to see that giddiness, that excitement, that hype build up through the show itself, or are we doing this because we're checking a box and fulfilling a requirement or a need from our community? And it started to feel more like a need. It started to feel more like something where people are talking about this, so we should probably do it. And it's like, I think we should do it when it hits. And if again, I think if just that audience, if I had seen, and another thing too, to be blunt, is I really wanted Brandon's son Kyle Moon to be a pitch to Nintendo and a pitch to the Pokemon Company to help us, to consider having Easy Allies be involved in the marketing and involved in the world of Pokemon. I wanted to kind of get my foot in the door with them, and we did not accomplish that with Brandon's son Kyle Moon. So I was like, well, gold, silver would be great, but am I going to just spend so much of my time now, my free time, playing Pokemon games for this series that maybe a small group of our community really enjoys, but isn't necessarily getting us traction anywhere else? Or is it better to not be involved in so many shows now? You don't see me on Frame Trap that much, and focus more on business stuff. And that's kind of been my focus for the last year or so. But the conversation does happen internally, unprovoked, sometimes. The little somebody plays something conversation, so we could possibly get back to it someday. And I think there is one additional Brandon Plays Pokemon question still left. It's a popular topic. Stefan Vlemix. Right now, the Easy A podcast starts with the intro tune, but isn't it a better idea to start off with a spoken intro followed by the intro tune? Here's an idea of what I'm talking about. Close-up of Kyle. Hey allies, we've got a packed podcast this week. First, we're going to talk about Black Ops 4, Ghosts of Tsushima, Spider-Man, Dragon Quest XI, and Gears 5, and put them on the Desire Index. But first, let's talk about Fortnite's missile launch event. Followed by the intro, tune visuals, podcast begins. This way, it's immediately clear to everyone what the show is going to be about. I think this is especially helpful for the audio-only listeners because they can't easily see timestamps. I hear you. Maybe I'm just a creature of habit, but I don't know if I want to change the Easy Allies podcast. As people mentioned in the comments of this comment on patreon.com/easyallies in the Cup of Jones post for July 24th, or July 10th, sorry. Our other podcasts do this. I don't believe Frame Trap starts that way. Friend Code starts this way. And so I hear what you're saying. I do listen to a lot of podcasts that don't start that way. So I don't think... I think it is another idea, Stefan. I don't think it is quote-unquote a better idea. I could see both of those being okay. So I don't know if that is something we're going to do. I will maybe throw that at Kyle if I can remember. But when we're shooting the podcast tonight, because I will not have time to get back to this laptop before we do, because I will be running all over the place today. But... yeah, I see pluses and minuses. Like, I just don't see... Again, I've just listened to lots of shows like Radiolab and This American Life and other stuff where it just kind of like... Now I've given those examples. I'm not 100% sure if they start with the song, but I'm familiar with a lot of podcasts that do. That just kind of like, this is our specific intro. And some people, chat is kind of... mixed on it, where they're like, well, I think the podcast is okay that way, or maybe it's a matter of taste. So I don't necessarily think we need to break stride right now, but I will enter it into the creative conversation surrounding the podcast. Parasite Paladin. Now, this is just for fun and not to be taken seriously by anybody. This is a small list of old GT shows. What dollar amount on Patreon would you put them for their goals? I don't want to think about that right now, Parasite Paladin, because I've been thinking about other goals. But I will do this. I will rank the significance of these shows. The shows are Level Backpack, Level Backtrack, Timeline, We Try to Explain Blank in Blank Minutes, and Hit Points. I had to look up Hit Points. I was like, Hit Points? I don't know if I remember Hit Points, Blood. It's like, wow, Hit Points. Hit Points was kind of like checking out. It was kind of like a non-preview preview, where we basically came up with the top 5 things you should know about this game. And so, yeah, so we would just be like Assassin's Creed 3 was a hit points that I looked up, and one was like the woods. It was like one topic, and we're like, hey, you're gonna be able to go into the woods. And I remember the logo for hit points, and we just repurposed the countdown graphics, used the same sound effects and everything. So yeah, hit points. I would put hit points is kind of fun. Not necessarily something I'd want to do, but again, Parasite Paladin has picked these specifically. So let me start with the most complex show, the highest financial goal first, and then move down. Obviously, Timeline is a $150,000 Patreon goal. There's no way we're ever getting back to that show. That's not a promise, but that's just my own personal take. Maybe put Backtrack underneath that, because Backtrack is very complex. Blood can probably speak more to that. And then maybe we try to explain blank and blank minutes, because there's kind of a stress level involved around that. Huber did Metal Gear, and actually we were talking about that the other day, and Huber was like very distressed over what he deemed a poor job that he did. And it's like, well, that's kind of the point, man, is being bad at it and having people laugh and be like, haha, you pronounced that name wrong, because you're, flustered and in a hurry. So if we were to tell the Allies we're doing this show again, I'd want it to be, worth it for them. And then hit points is super easy. I probably put hit points in the bottom, and then put level on top of that. So hit points, then level, then we try to explain blank and blank minutes, then backtrack, then timeline. Michael Chandler, a friend of mine, has a commercial space downtown near San Diego Comic-Con with a coffee shop, tables, chairs, a little patio kind of area, snacks. I'm not sure what he's doing for Comic-Con, but if you want me to ask, I think it could be a good meetup space. I'm sure he would be cool with the Allies meeting there. Way too late. I didn't get this comment, sorry, until after I had left for Comic-Con, and it possibly would have been too late by the time I had read this the week after for Cup of Jones. But hey, if you remember, hit me up next year, and maybe we can make something like that happen. Again, maybe just send me an email, brandon@easyallies.com. It wouldn't have worked this year because Mr. Ian Hink was editing for MTV. If you go to MTV and you see the conclusion of their Comic-Con coverage, they took a big picture of all the people there, and Ian's in the back. And Ian edited some stuff like he does so well, and he was working at the Hilton, and so, which is where we had our meetup. And so I wanted it to either be in the Hilton or Hilton adjacent. So I don't know where your friends spot is located, but I wanted something that wasn't going to take people a long time to get to from the convention center, because like one of the tricky things about Comic-Con is that I've just kind of given up on trying to avoid is, if you schedule something that you want people to go to at Comic-Con, half of the people that aren't going to attend your event are not attending it because they just missed the information because there's so much news spreading around at Comic-Con, or something's going on that they just would rather go to. And no matter what, we always get that comment from people who are like, there's just a killer panel at Hall H right now. I love you, Allies, but I gotta go to this thing. Or this is the only time that I can go and meet my friends. Or, oh, I just happened to be at Comic-Con on Thursday or Friday, but I left on Saturday. And so I just try to make it as easy for people to just kind of like, for 5 minutes, just get out of the convention, go say hi to us, and then get back if they only have a small window, or if they're like an exhibitor and are actually working at Comic-Con and like can't leave their booth for too long. So shout out to Mega64, who always sells merch at Comic-Con, and I went and I said hi to them. I know there's been some comments from people in the past that want us to collaborate with Mega64. We talked about that very thing. We joked about how we're both to blame for like not being proactive with collaborating, and they're like, yeah, we're in Los Angeles a lot. And I'm like, you need to email me when you do that, because I email you guys and I say, let me know when you're in Los Angeles next, and then they come to Los Angeles and they let me know. So, but again, it's on me to not harass them to inform that. But we just kind of chuckle. It's like another year went by, another 365 missed opportunities of not collaborating again with Easy Allies and Mega 64. Got a free Mega 64 shirt. I always go in and steal a shirt from those guys. I love it. Alex Castellanos, on the EZA website, maybe on the bottom of the upcoming schedule, there's a section of what all 6 review. Oh, I'm sorry, I abridged this, but Alex Castellanos is suggesting, what about on the Easy Allies website, maybe on the bottom of the upcoming schedule, there is a section of what all 6 reviewers are going to be reviewing next. For instance, it would say Ben, Octopath Traveler, Huber, whatever game, Brad, whatever game, etc. This would give your viewers, listeners, a chance of knowing what reviews we can expect in the near future out of all the releases and remasters that are coming out, especially with the busy fall season of games incoming. Bloodworth leaves a much better response than I ever could. We do have a section on the schedule for this labeled also in the works. However, reviews don't always go as planned. Someone may start on a game thinking they're going to do a review, then for various reasons they might end up changing priorities to work on something else, or they may decide to cover the game in a different format. For this reason, it's my policy not to add reviews to the upcoming section of the schedule until the first draft of the script is delivered. So there you go. That's official Easy Allies policy. Like I said, right now, Brad is assigned to work on Battle for Azeroth, but that doesn't guarantee he might get into that game and be like, I'm not gonna be able to finish this, so I'm just gonna stream it, and that'll be that. So yeah, you never know. We gotta be limber. We gotta move. Cash. Regarding the studio, are you expecting it will be large enough for the full-time allies to work from there every day, like the Funhouse Sugar Pine 7 office, or do you think it will be used like the garage where you just come in to film shows? A little bit of both. Mostly the garage studio aspect, mostly a place where we shoot stuff, but there will be a desk or two. Yeah. So probably, I would like 2 desks would be great. Just kind of an administration desk, something that people can use to just sit down and work, something that like Kyle can put his laptop on, or Don can put his laptop down and edit, and then like an actual editing setup so that if we aren't streaming anything at the time, somebody can sit down on that streaming PC and edit something if they want to. Possibly edit on the gaming PC, I don't know. That is something that we've talked about investing in when we get into the studio, is buying a second PC. So if we are streaming something that is being played on PC, the PC that is playing the game isn't the PC that is also streaming the game. Max versus the games. My favorite group streams have all been Don's design challenges. Now that we took out the option for the patrons to select and vote on the group streams, how often can we expect those types of streams? Kind of streams. Is this the kind of thing that would come back in any capacity as a more regular show once you get a studio? Don has a very busy schedule. I do not know. Probably not. Either as it was at GT with Don creating the level and having others play it, or as it was at EZA with 2 teams creating levels and having Don or another ally being the judge. Those streams were awesome and amongst the funniest, and it seems like you guys also had a great time, so it would be great to see more of those. I think the reason you don't see a lot of those, Max, is there aren't a lot of games that require that. Obviously, when Dreams come out, we will do a Don's Dreams challenge. I'm again not making guarantees, because if Don doesn't want to do it, we're not going to do it, but that would seem fairly logical to me. So I just think we don't want to, Trials would be another fun one, but like I think we don't want to keep going back and like Mario Maker again, it's like, oh, that's fun, but it'd just be neat to play different games. We had the Korg challenge, and for some of these, having a Don's design challenge thing, sometimes it's dependent on Don whether he wants to be the judge or not, or whether anybody wants to be the judge. Sometimes that can be very stressful. Sometimes people want to be more participatory in the streams that we are doing, but it does seem like a while since we've done that. So if things get a little light in the months ahead and we have a tournament coming up or need an idea for a stream, then I will definitely throw out to do, because yeah, Far Cry was really fun. Mario Maker is always really fun. Nobody doesn't like those streams, not to be double negative, but everyone adores Sticks. Noah Trainer. I was listening to the Huber Syndrome with Damiani from a couple weeks ago, and the first 10 minutes of the podcast with the two of them talking about sports was one of my favorite Easy Allies moments. Similarly, whenever you guys play a sports game on stream, it's always a blast to watch two seemingly disparate entertainment mediums I love come together. Understandably, you guys don't talk about sports too often, this being a video game website. However, maybe a pitch to some of the guys who follow sports closer than others could be a monthly show where they either discuss sports games, mess around and dump sports games, or some other format of the like. This is probably too niche of a show, but maybe short limited run to gauge interest if any of the guys are interested. I'm sure there's a very, very small number of guys that are interested in doing that. I'm sure there are other sports nerds out there who like to see this vein explored, similar to how you guys have less frequent, yet still great shows on non-video game entertainment fields such as movies, reaction shots, books, Blood Pact. Do we talk about books in Blood Pact? Maybe Blood can answer that. Anime and tabletop games. Of course, this only works if an ally is passionate about it, just an idea to pitch. Great pitch, Noah. Yeah, it helps if allies are specifically passionate about that. My main reason for not doing that show and pushing that far down the road is the fact that our talking heads quotient is a bit intense right now. We have a lot of shows that are just us talking, and if we were to add new shows, I would want those to be a little more outside the box than the type of stuff that we're typically producing. So and for that reason, probably won't do that. Keon Jerome, on the topic of future series akin to Brandon Plays Pokemon, what about something like Brandon Watches, such as Brandon Watches Gotham, with Huber as the other host? I haven't thought this through at all, so it might be a bad idea, but I thought I just might as well put this out there. I would love to do more stuff like that. We did, Kyle and I did sit down and watch a Pokemon series that was based on Pokemon Red and Blue following Brandon Plays Pokemon. So it was fun, now that I was familiar with the story, to then go through that anime. And we watched it and then told people when to start it, and then so they could watch it along with us. We could put that stuff up. Unless you have access to the show that we're watching, that doesn't necessarily make the most exciting type of content, but that's a stream that we could maybe do sometime, or that's a show that we can maybe do if we get more group stuff involved in the studio. But I ain't watching Gotham, I'll tell you that much. Morgan Mohala, I hate to ask, but are you in control of your "and for that reasons," quote unquote? I hear you say it a lot. I just said it, it's funny. And I can't tell if it's stuck in your head or if you are a master of marketing that show. Well, both. Whenever I say "and for that reason," it does come up in my brain, and I try to not say it too many times, but I give myself at least one per Cup of Jones or stream if I'm on, or the podcast. And I always try to say, "and for that reason." I try to quote the show, because it definitely does stick out. I'll tell you what sticks out: the words "kinda" and "funny." Ever since that damn channel started, I can't. Somebody was like, "Oh, that's kind of funny," and I'm like, are you making a joke? I can't tell, because it's like that's just was so fit. Am I saying that more now that I'm familiar with that brand, or less now, or am I just more aware of it now since they started? So I don't know, but it's not necessarily stuck in my head. It's just something that I can't tell. I can't tell if I'm saying it the same number of times as I said it before, or if I'm just saying it now because I come to that point in my brain where I need a phrase to fill in that blank, and my brain's like, "and for that reason," and I'm like, "No, that's the show that we do. Give me another one." So, who knows how the human brain works, Morgan? It's fascinating. Sid27, would you consider modifying 2 or 3 Patreon mid-range tiers at this stage if it's going to help you pass 50K easily? I was checking other creators, and they seem to use some healthy optional incentives to help make the passive members interested and active. It for sure requires some additional work, but it should pay off really well. I personally see the current structure a bit scattered. Sid, there is not a lot of specifics in your comments, so I'm not sure exactly what tiers you're talking about or what we could shift them to. All of those could be shifted in some way, and those could all have potential benefits one way or the other. I have often reevaluated or tried to reevaluate some of the financial level of a lot of our tiers, but I can't say if that's something we necessarily need to do or if that would necessarily push us over 50K. Right now we're focused on new goals. If we set up new goals and we still stay below 50K, then maybe that's something that we would do in the future, and reevaluate our existing goals, and if those are incentivizing people at the dollar amount that they are currently at. If you want to continue this conversation, and I would love to do that, Sid27, maybe give me one. Give me one that you're like, I think this is silly at that level. I think it should be at this level, and here's why. And we can start there. VG Junkie has a question that I will read after I drink this water. Some people think it's coffee. It is not. It is always water. VG Junkie, feedback. Brandon Plays Pokemon happened pretty early for EZA, and I actually think that if you tried it again with a similar format, it would do pretty well, considering your increased popularity since then. Having Huber on Trailer Jones when you bring a CG trailer is rough. Oh, that might have been a comment from something else. Okay, I think this is the actual comment. Just another thing, feedback for Brandon Plays Pokemon. Having Huber on Trailer Jones when you bring a CG trailer is rough. There was no criticism for the content besides the fact that it was a CG trailer, but I think that you earned BG&E 2 the lowest individual score of the night out of any that you guys gave. If there's such a clear bias or hang-up like that on the panel, you should just keep those trailers away from him. Note, it's not quite the same situation as Kyle's pre-order rule. As for the question, I personally think that it ruins the integrity of the final score of a trailer if you are altering your individual scores so that the average ends up where you think it should actually be. Example, giving a lower score if you think the other guys are going to rate it higher to bring down the average or vice versa. However, I also feel like it might be impossible for you to get around subconsciously adjusting your score if you have an idea of what your panel is going to do. Do you think that there's any way to remove that particular bias from the equation so that the average is more quote-unquote honest, so to speak? No. There's always going to be that that catch. You're never going to know what person doesn't like something. Somebody could discover, I wouldn't necessarily call it a bias, but like a strong opinion. Somebody could discover a strong opinion just from watching the trailer again. Somebody could have seen that trailer and then watch it a second time and be like, you know what? The more I watch this, I don't like that character. I don't like that music that's in this. I think there's too much narration. You're like, well, you have a bias against narration. Like, you never know what someone's going to be stuck on. What I have found from working on Trailer Jones is that things average out in an interesting way. I find that I kind of bend the curve to a more unnecessarily positive way, that I tend to give scores, maybe higher scores than they deserve. A lot of times I'm on the higher part of the range. A lot of times I surprise the panelists when I say, like, I had this problem, so 8.6. And they're like, whoa, that was a lot higher than I thought it was going to be. So that's why I like averaging these things out, because I don't think there's such a thing as an honest review score. I mean, obviously you want it to be honest to the opinion of the reviewer, but I don't think there's a score that necessarily finds any sort of, truth behind what the quality of an actual game. It is always about somebody's perspective. It's always someone's individual opinion. And so I like averaging them out so that we can find some kind of common ground. The panelists change, so the scores are going to be all over the place. And I'm not too concerned about what the score is, because I think the discussion is the most important thing. I think the score points to the discussion. So if a company found out, what, our thing got an 8.2, and then listened to the discussion because of that score, then we did our job. We brought them in, and they were able to follow our analysis because of the score that was presented. And people have different rules about different things. There's also no like Metacritic average that scores those things out, so I'm not so nervous about putting out a score that could potentially be a little harsh, because it's just us complaining about trailers over here. It's not really going anywhere, or it's not affecting sales of any type. It's just like it's just an editorial show. So if one day so many people score trailers that there is a collective thing, maybe I will score trailers individually like we do games, and not do a collective thing like we do now. But I'm not super worried about it. But I appreciate your concern, and I will keep that in the back of my mind. Apologies for the snot rag. Ahab, I'm curious if the Allies have floated the idea of doing a Brandon Plays Pokemon style show. Can't make this up. But with any other allies as the guide first time player. For example, Kyle seems to have a lot of love for MBS2. He'd be a great guide host. Huber would be great for RE2, Brad Tenchu, etc. I figure all the allies have blind spots for great games they never played, while another ally that absolutely knows and loves that game. For me, that was part of the joy of Brandon Plays Pokemon, the longtime expert and the new perspective. Not only a new perspective, a brand new perspective, an unvarnished perspective. I had never, ever played Pokemon. And so that is very rare that someone's like, I've never, not even for a second, I've never even controlled, and I really don't know a lot about how the game is structured, where that's hard because we are exposed to so many games in this business, more and more as our careers go on. And so I'll tell you this, Ahab, this is basically where we are with that concept. Someone every now and then will bring up something. We'll bring up, oh, you should play, Brad Jones, you should play Kingdom Hearts. And I'm like, yeah. Well, I played Kingdom Hearts 2, so I could go back and play Kingdom Hearts 1 and we could talk about it, but it wouldn't be as great as Brandon Plays Pokemon, because I'm like very familiar with the Kingdom Hearts franchise, even though it's not something that I make a lot of time for. But I wouldn't be going through Kingdom Hearts 1 being like, what? What's a gummy ship? Like, I know all of that. And so somebody brings something up. The person who wants the other ally to play that franchise brings up the fact that they haven't played it. That other ally then responds and says, yeah, I haven't played that. That seems like a Brandon Plays Pokemon situation. And then they'll both like nod and think about it for a second, and then the conversation moves on to something else. So like, it just needs to get past that phase. It needs to get to the point where those two allies are like, no, we have to do this. This is really important. We have to do it. Let's make time for it. I kind of don't want that person to be me, because I was the subject of the last show. So if we were to do another one of those, I would want it to be somebody else. It has to be organic. It has to be something that you just have two people and they're like, I gotta do it. And it just hasn't happened yet. So, and morale is one of my most important things to focus on here at Easy Allies. And I just don't want to be like, you play it, and have a person be like, all right. I want both parties to be excited. I want the person who is the expert to be excited that their friend is going to play that game, and I want that friend to be able to put a lot of things on back burner because they're specifically focusing on this new adventure that they're about to go on. Alex, if you can talk about it, what happened to the Thrill House sponsorship? You made a video thanking him for being the biggest donor, and then he was never read out as a sponsor, save for the frame trap that was pre-recorded before the first of the month. Yeah, that was a goof. We need to learn not to do that, because sometimes, depending on the crossover for what day is what, when we shoot what shows, for somebody's going on vacation or something like that, we might get a lead on who's going to be a sponsor of what before that information is actually certified. And that's basically what happened. Thrill House became a sponsor of us in the month of June. And then July came around and the charge didn't go through. We reached out to them. They were unavailable. They were unable to make the charge go through. And so we then had to open up that space to bring in other people. So I think we should be more careful about that stuff when it comes to specific sponsor callouts in the show. I don't have a regret bringing up Thrill House's name when I did the Breathe 50K stream where I said, hey, whoa, we hit 50K, woohoo! I'm still totally comfortable mentioning Thrill House's name in that context because I felt that they were responsible for invigorating our community and creating this kind of excitement that we can do this. You know, we're so close to this goal, we can make this happen, and so I am still in debt to Thrill House for making that happen. Hopefully we can bring them on as a sponsor in the immediate future. Not something that they are able to do right now, and that happens. You know, we have some of our long-standing sponsors sometimes get their credit cards declined because it might be on an account that they're not monitoring or something just financially might not work out. So again, it's just why, and we're getting to that point right now at the end of July, the beginnings of months are a tricky business. There are other ways that finances can be set up potentially on Patreon. It's something we can maybe explore in the future. We're not necessarily ready to make the jump into a different system right now, but yeah, that's what happened there. So, yeah, again, hopefully we can have them on again in the future, but I am happy that I said thank you because regardless of whether that payment went through, I thought that was a nice thing to do. That worked out well for us. That sort of attention. Corey Swafford, I've been thinking about how you guys are dealing with Patreon exclusive content. I feel it's great to give people an incentive to pledge to Easy Allies, but at the same time, I hate for you guys to miss out on a lot of potential viewership because certain relevant discussions aren't showing up in common YouTube searches. I'm mostly referring to spoiler mode. I know a lot of time after I watch a new movie or finish one of the latest games, I love going online and finding people talking about them. I know I'm not alone in this, and I feel out of all of your content, spoiler mode would likely be the easiest for people to randomly stumble upon. I feel Patreon exclusive content is better suited for your more creative, completely original content that isn't being done by anyone else, Boxpeak, and for that reason, etc. And your broader appeal content should be showing up in as many YouTube searches as possible. Yes, this is a double-edged sword. Because on one end, yeah, that is something that could potentially get us new viewers coming over and recognizing Easy Allies and then signing up and subscribing and joining up on Twitch and Patreon. At the same time, there are a lot of people in our community that would love to be a part of that conversation and are only a part of our Patreon because they want to get videos like that. And so, you know, what's the more important incentive? Is it to have people from our community make the jump into joining our Patreon, or is it to have people that never heard about us join YouTube? When you say, let me see, I feel out of all your content would likely be the easiest for people to randomly stumble upon. The easiest thing people can randomly stumble upon is our reviews. That's the thing that will never go behind a paywall. That's our major effort that we do to have something be available for people that does not need to be necessarily specific to Easy Allies. It's something that you would find, and which is why we put the name of the game first, Detroit Become Human Easy Allies Review. Like, more than anything, we want you to go searching for Detroit Become Human and have that be the thing that then led you to discovering Easy Allies. And without fail, every single time in the comments, we'll have at least one person that's like, that sounds like the Game Trailers guy. So I hear you, Corey, and maybe this is something that we can solve down the road once we're able to create more exclusive shows, once we're able to produce more things that we can put behind the scenes, then maybe we can switch and move that forward, because you're not the only person that has an issue with that. For reasons that you've stated very clearly, and that completely makes sense, which is that spoiler mode is those type of shows that people want to watch because they just want to find as many people's opinions about it as possible, and then that would lead them to finding us. Greg Kettering, I think think it's great that you have collaborated with Some Game News for the Best of E3 videos. Do you have plans for doing something similar for something like Easy Livin'? I don't think the usual weekly Easy Eclipse video would do the 50-hour streaming event justice. I believe we did have an Easy Livin' highlight video produced by Some Game News last year. I cannot speak for them because we are not officially in business with Some Game News. We are working with them, if you can understand the difference there. We are collaborating with Some Game News they produced highlights from all of our press conferences and from our post E3 deliberations. We are incredibly grateful for them producing those, and I would love it if they would help us out and highlight the stuff from Easy Livin'. Don't want to count on it, don't want to promise it, so that is something that we would like to do. That is something that we did last year. There's your information. You can hopefully put that together, and hopefully we can make that happen again. We have 40 minutes left, and we're almost done with business questions. So we'll get to personal questions. I don't know if we'll get to all of them, but let's hustle. Let's do it. Hopefully I'm not going too fast. Hopefully the pace is okay for everybody. Cinderbite, after seeing several videos and demos of Media Molecule's Dreams, I'm completely sold on it. I was wondering if any allies have thought of doing a show project in the future using it. Maybe even an interactive one that the community can participate or play along in, or just a great possible group stream community showcase to show off some creators' hard work. Yeah, there are some allies here at Easy Allies, just a couple, that are very, very into Dreams and might possibly one day want to do some kind of a Toy Box Tuesday variant where we're building things and playing content created by the community, maybe playing multiplayer games with our community, maybe checking stuff out, maybe doing that, say, on a morning throughout the week, kind of like I did with Disney Infinity. Yeah, man. When is it coming out? Oh. I hear you, and I would continue answering this question, but I will not, because it's making me sad thinking about that game, because I have no idea when that game is coming out. I have not had... Every time I meet with the team at Media Molecule, there is not like a growing consensus getting closer to like a launch window. You know, it's not like, oh yeah, remember last time how I just gave you this kind of 2-year gap? Well, now that gap is shortened. They're always like, we don't know. Every time. We might have a beta this year. We're hoping. Like, so yeah, I if time permits, I want to stream that every week. I want to make a level for every single ally and have them play it. I want to make one very specific level that is probably going to take me a while, but maybe I can do a certain amount of streams and you can hang out with me while I build that, and hopefully keep the allies from watching it so that they can come in and be surprised when I'm done with the final project. I want to do a Don's Design Challenge where they can play it. I want to play content with our community. I want to play stuff built by our community. I want to do streams where I just run around and play a bunch of different levels. Like, there's so many options of stuff that you could do, but there's no point in planning it because I have no idea when that game is coming out. The Finnish Ally, how would you feel about bringing back full playthrough Fridays as an additional 50k or a completely new 52k goal? And wouldn't it be that kind of show that would benefit from a studio? I was thinking about future goals past 50k and new shows that would differentiate yourselves from other channels, aside from your personalities, of course. And it occurred to me, none of the main gaming channels, IGN, GameSpot, Kinda Funny, does full playthroughs. You guys have done some in the past and they usually get pretty decent views. At least Resident Evil 7, Super Mario Sunshine, and Knack 2 come to mind. Why not make it a regular thing, as a weekly mini group stream with 2 to 3 allies present? Full playthrough Fridays also gives you a good opportunity to bring back the $2 tier and original selection committee. Ooh, I don't know about that. I don't know if we would want to let our community decide what game we're going to be playing for 40 plus hours. Well, we couldn't do that at full playthrough. Yeah, I think like 20 is probably the cutoff. And maybe a group stream game every now and then. Could incite $1 patrons to up their pledge and give you some new ones along the way. The Finnish Ally, I will tell you this. Your comment was brought up, not this your comment specifically, but that topic was brought up at the meeting. We did discuss the potential of bringing back full playthrough Fridays in some capacity. So, I will not tell you what decision was made or what could be happening down the road, but that was something that we did talk about. So, it's kind of funny that you brought that up. Kind of funny. There we go. Time to move on to personal questions. Let's take a nice break. 7th inning stretch, everybody. When you're at Comic-Con, man, you discover whole new types of soreness that you never even knew existed. Fun parts of your back, you're like, oh, that's fun. A little pain back there, that's exciting. what is it? What is the back of your, like, not your shin. Your shin is like the front of your leg. What's like the back? Like just above your ankle? What's that? Like the back of your leg? That guy? Just along the right side? Just in my right leg. I think on like Thursday was like, I'm done. Let's go home. I'm finished with Comic-Con. And then like felt fine the rest of the week. But calf. Yeah, my calf was mooing. Oh boy. But it's too much fun. It's just like E3, man. Once you like get to Comic-Con and you're caught up in the madness, it is super, super fun. And a special thank you, as long as I'm talking about it. Thanks to everybody that I said hi to at Comic-Con. A lot of fun people came up and talked to us. I think my favorite fan that said hi to me was, I was at a party and I was talking with a friend of Amanda's, and he was talking with another gentleman that I just came up and interrupted their conversation. And they were talking about this shirt that this subject was wearing that was for Back to the Future, the ride. And it was like mint condition. I'm like, that shirt is in such good quality. Like that decal is so bright and colorful. Like, how did you do that? What detergent do you use? And he really explained, like, he's like, I cherish a lot of the rare shirts that I have, and I buy a lot of shirts from people because they don't understand the value of it. And I wash them inside out, and he presses them in a particular way, and he really like takes care of his shirt. And so we talked about the Simpsons ride and the Back to the Future ride and Universal Studios and Harry Potter Land and all. We took, like, the conversation went all over the place, and then he had to leave, and he was like, cool. Well, it was nice to meet you, not to me, but to Brian, the other guy that I was with, and then turned to me and said, oh, big fan, by the way. I was like, of what? He said, of Easy Allies. I was like, wait, what? And this was at, I think, the YouTube Originals party that was also co-hosted by someone else, BuzzFeed maybe? I can't remember. And I just wasn't, I didn't know that person knew who I was in that conversation, and they didn't say anything to that effect. So it's just funny at the end that they were just like, oh, by the way, I know about Easy Allies. And it's like, that's not something that I'm ever going to assume that you know that Easy Allies is a thing. So that was very tickled. And there were a lot of people that bumped into us. It's so rad to be bumped into and told someone likes your work when they are themselves a very successful, viable, creative business professional. So I'm like, cool, what are you here for? And they're like, oh, I'm a composer. I worked on several films. And I'm like, like, oh, I'm an actor that you recognize from this show or movie, and I know what Easy Allies is. Congratulations on your success. So, super awesome feedback, personal. Steven ZT, a common complaint I see come up whenever one of the allies expresses a social or political belief on a stream or a podcast is, this isn't the place to do that. While I do not share this complaint and love hearing everyone's opinions on those subjects, it did get me thinking, what if there was a place to do that? I think a show where some of you get together to discuss your thoughts and views on the video game and related news that intersects with more social commentary would be really interesting. Could be really interesting. There's a lot of discussion to be had regarding things like representation, ethics, or content. Some things like the current movement to create a labor union for game devs, which might feel uncomfortable or out of place to some on any of the podcasts, would be engaging to hear from the allies' perspectives. I know there are a lot of those that get aggressive about leaving quote-unquote politics out of EZA content, but there are many of us who really value your opinions and are interested in hearing your arguments. I think a dedicated show, even if it was just once a month, could be extremely engaging for those interested, while appeasing those who get upset about them by being completely separated from the flagship shows. Yeah, this is a bit loaded. One, obviously, there's like the fear of bringing up, which is real. I gotta be honest. You know, like I'm sure there's frustration with a lot of things. We're like, wow, I thought for sure they were gonna talk about that on the podcast, but I guess they dodged that or didn't want to get into that. Sometimes we do that because we don't feel like our opinion is gonna really move the needle that much. It's really gonna like push the conversation forward in any meaningful direction. Like if something terrible happens to somebody, we would just kind of at the table be like, yeah, that was terrible. That shouldn't have happened. And then like that's kind of the extent of the conversation. I think, and this is just me, this is why I put this in personal, because this is just my personal response to this. I think one of the reasons too is when you talk about, say, you bring up the labor unions, for example, say the Switch sells more than something else. I feel that's a conversation that we can have from a business perspective, even if we are not all Michael Pachters, even if we don't have a lot of, really extensive entrepreneurial business knowledge, even if we don't own stock in that company or are not at like, meetings, financial meetings, or we can just kind of speculate. We can look at the consumer perspective of a gaming fan from being a fan of those games, from playing those things, seeing the way companies react, looking at their production history and their financial history, and then trying to make a call on what you think they're going to do. Talking about Epic Games involved with Fortnite, I don't, I have friends at Epic Games. They don't tell me squat, but I have experience with that game. I have experience with that company, and so I can offer my opinion, but I don't want to present it in a way where it's like, this is fact, this is the way that you should feel and everybody should feel about this particular issue. And so I think that's one of the main things that keeps us from joining conversations that you think we should be involved in. It's not that this isn't the place to do that. You never know what conversation is going to suddenly come creeping into our lives and our world here at Easy Allies. But I want to come from a position that we know what we're talking about. And I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to labor reunions for game developers. I want to hear from game developers about that. That seems like a great idea. Yay, unions. The unions are, my wife's a voice actor, and so there's a lot of possible topics that come up in terms of how much they get paid and how much they should get paid, and should they be collaborating more, to get the goals that they want. But from a business perspective, I just think the blowback is so much more inevitable when you start talking about something that does not affect you directly. When Patreon changed their random tiers and everybody, potentially got screwed financially, we came out right away and we're like, no, we don't like that because this directly affects our business, because this directly affects us, because we do come from a position of being knowledgeable about the topic and having an opinion that we feel matters because we are directly involved in it. Where if we are not directly involved in something, I feel that it is our responsibility to do much more research than we have the time or even honestly sometimes the interest to do for many, many, many reasons. And so that's why we dodge that stuff sometimes. That can be really frustrating. I think there's even a topic coming up later on where somebody says, I believe it is your responsibility to talk about those things. And one of the other reasons why I would be nervous about doing a weekly or monthly show that is specifically geared towards getting down and dirty with a lot of the topics that are affecting our world is that it would almost always be some kind of a downer, and we would have to think of something. It's like, if it was on the calendar, it's like, oh no, this thing is coming up. Like, what topic do we just want to force ourselves to talk about? I feel that if something is worth talking about and we can't keep it inside and we need to, talk about it on our personal Twitter feeds or mention it in our shows or bringing it up during a podcast, or if a conversation just happens to pop up during a group stream or another live stream, then that's how that happens. But if we had a show coming up, I don't want to force a discussion where it's like, well, next Tuesday is when we usually shoot that thing, so who wants to drag up some conversation and get into it again and then have that be something that we talk about? The other thing too, Steven, even though you're suggesting that, what if we just limit that conversation to one show? The conversation's not going to be limited to that show. If we do a show and we talk about those political things on that show, that conversation is then going to bleed out to all of our other YouTube comments. It's going to, people are going to show up for group stream night and be like, hey, did you hear about that episode they did? And then our mods are going to be like, well, we really don't want to talk about that here on the group stream. And it's like, why aren't we talking about that? They did a show about it. Why would they do a show if they're not willing to talk about that at any time? And that's another issue that I have with bringing up of these things a lot, is that because I'm so busy and so focused on the business of creating content for Easy Allies, I honestly do not have time to do the follow through that is required, I believe personally, for being involved in these conversations online on social media, where it's not just a matter of, here's my opinion later, it's like, here's my opinion, and then you got to stick around because people are going to disagree with that, and people are going to want to ask you for more specifics and really kind of try to focus on really what you mean when you say the things that you're saying. And so it's not just taking the time to articulate your opinion, it's taking the time to then defend it, to then clarify it, to then join the conversation, to then make it worthwhile for people to then join the conversation with you, and to make it seem like you're not just somebody who's just shotgunning opinions all over the place and not holding to the responsibility of being there when those opinions have a reaction. And so if we can't be there to continue that conversation, it's not worth starting that conversation in the first place. Does that make sense? That's a lot of different kind of comments that are all over the place, but that, and I gotta be honest, if there was a group of the allies in the room right now and I said, who wants to do a politics show? Nobody would raise their hands, and that's just kind of the simple truth of it. Kola Aina, I think I asked questions about most of the allies already except you. If you missed it, Kola Aina has been asking me what I thought of all of the other allies. And boy, there's a political stance for you. What I think about Kyle Bossman. I really like you. Thank you, Kola. I really like you too. Thank you for giving me those opportunities to talk about that stuff. The main reason I became a patron was because I was curious about Cup of Jones, and I stuck with it because it's good content, and you're the best in the biz. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Yeah, sure. Sure. I think the thing that's most interesting... I'm thirsty. How about that? We can start there. I'll be right back. Well, you know, I was born in Los Angeles. I'm a California kid. When I went to college, people could tell right away because I kept saying dude a lot. Oh, it's that guy that says dude to everything. Dude! I like being silly. I hope that never changes. I don't know if I ever grew up. I really try not to. Easy Allies has put me more into the not growing up, or to the growing up category than I would have liked. Just for all the business stuff that we're having to do, all the scheduling and thinking ahead. Thinking ahead is a very adult thing. I think maturity can probably be easiest defined by how far ahead you think. You know, like to me that's like being 5. It's just like whatever, I'm eating gum right now. You know, you're not really thinking about the future. You're not really thinking about like the next step, consequences more than anything. And then I think once you're like, what's my budget for next month? You're like, oh crap, I grew up. It happened. But yeah, big fan of Disneyland, big fan of puppets, big fan of cartoons, big fan of you know, movies and TV shows and comic books and escapism. And it's one of the reasons I love video games. I love being immersed in another world. I love just kind of like seeing how far from this reality I could pull myself and then still come back and try to have any semblance of normality. So that's me, my personality. Something that people might not know. People might be kind of sick of hearing this if you watched every episode of Cup of Jones, but I have an extensive theater background. I used to do a lot of performing. I did a lot of children's theater when I was a kid. I remember seeing a production of Jesus Christ Superstar at my high school, or the high school I would eventually go to, and I was blown away. I was like, this is really cool, and I can't believe the students are doing this. And I asked my mom on the drive home, I was like, so the students just like do that? And she's like, yeah, they go to rehearsals and they are cast in a show and they learn to sing and dance and get up on stage. And I was like, wow, that sounds really cool. I want to do more of that. I also was, I don't know if I would necessarily call it a class clown, because to me, when you talk about a class clown, that is someone like Val Kilmer in Real Genius, who like has a method to their madness. They like show up at work at school and they're like, I'm gonna do this today. I have this plan for doing this prank on this person, or I'm gonna troll the teacher doing this way, or I'm gonna tell this joke at this specific point. I was just a goofball. I was just really hard to like calm down. I've always been kind of spastic. That's why I get anxiety really easily. That's why I try to like meditate as much as I can to just like slow my brain down. So because of that, I think it was one teacher told my mom, Brandon's really great. He's very involved when he's interested in the things that we're working on in class. I might recommend some kind of extracurricular activity that Brandon could engage in that would help him get out some of these creative ideas that he has. Because when we're doing our math, multiplication timetables, it's not really a great time to start singing or dancing around the room. And so she put me into theater, and then I absolutely fell in love with that, and I did that consistently up until my freshman year in college. And then I switched over to a film major where I learned how to edit nonlinear on Media 100 and Adobe Premiere and Avid and all that fun stuff, and then fell in love with lighting and script writing and video production and started doing short films and started just making little fun videos, and then I started making trailers for video games, and then started making videos for video games, and then that's what I do now. And but ever since I switched over into video production, I still do theater every now and then, and I have a tremendous passion for it. I don't keep up with musicals a lot. I tell people that I like musicals, and so they're like, this musical, right? I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I miss a lot of the stuff that comes out on and off Broadway every year, and every time the Tonys happens, a good 80% of those musicals. I'm like, I've never heard of that before. Or if I have heard of that before, I didn't know that there was a revival of that. So yeah, there's a little bit about myself. There you go. Lee, I've been writing a few Fiasco playsets for you guys, and I was wondering if there was any setting, genre, theme you've been waiting to play with. Maybe one of your favorites with a different twist. I'm only saying this because you asked specifically, Lee. I hate telling our community to do something. I hate being like, oh, I wish I had this, wink wink, because we are gifted so many incredible things from the allies, and I never want to say, do this or I won't be happy. I don't want you slaving over something because you feel that Easy Allies won't be the same without it. But you asked, so because you asked specifically, Lee, noir, for sure. Some just like hard-boiled noir detective story. Like, it was raining outside on the street, and I was standing outside trying to light my cigarette. Then she came by. I noticed her red shoes before anything else. That kind of stuff. Like Dick Tracy, you know? Like, I would love, love, love to do that. Sin City, stuff like that. Have we done that in the past? I don't know. I've done so many Fiascos, I can't remember. Kevin DeBolt, Fiasco is actually the thing that's shooting, I believe. Fiasco is shooting in 22 minutes. I recently moved back to LA, and the first purchase I made when I got back was an annual pass for Disneyland. My wife and I have been going most weekends, and I just enjoy different parts of the park and realized there are quite a few other regulars who are there all the time. Oh yeah. Got me thinking it would be cool if we could experience the park with other like-minded people. I'm a 3D artist for games, and we're both into anything Disney. And Easy Allies seems like a great place to look considering what an awesome group of people we have here in our community. I ran the idea by Brandon on Twitter, and he seemed interested. I'm always interested. If it says Disneyland in there, I just favorite it immediately. I ran the idea by Brandon on Twitter. He seems interested as well, so would like to gauge the community's interest. I know there must be a lot of you that live in the area, so wanted to see if this sounded like something people would be down for. If there was an interest, we could set something up. Please respond to this if it sounds like something you would be interested in. This was a comment made on the last week episode. I believe this was no, it might have been the 10th. If not the 10th, on the 17th, I made a post that said, sorry, no Cup of Jones today. I'll see you next week. So it might be in one of those. I do not remember. But Kevin made this post in the Easy Allies forums and did not get a lot of traction. It is tough because we do have fans all over the world. A lot of the fans that we have locally sometimes can't afford to go to Disneyland. Unfortunately, Disneyland, the Disney company, the theme parks division of Disney, is not that welcoming to the whole, like, I'm gonna plan a big event, can I get discounts conversation. Mega 64 does a Disney event every single year. They call it Game Day. And not to be confused with Game Day 2018, which is starting tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific time on twitch.tv/EasyAllies. But they get together, they do like a convention of sorts at the Disneyland Hotel, and then they all go into the park, and I believe they did California Adventure last year instead of going into the main park. They take pictures, they have fun events. None of that is sanctioned by Disney. There's a lot of Disney events that Disney lets happen, but that's not something that they officially say, yeah, we'll put our stamp on that. That is something that Disney is also kind of co-producing. So certainly with the number of people that we would get to show up to some kind of a Disney meetup, I don't think it would be worth spending the exorbitant amount of money that would be needed to be spent to secure any type of specific location, but you twist my arm to just go to Disneyland and hang out. I always try to communicate on social media when I'm going to be there in advance, so people can go meet up with me. I know at least 5 allies off the top of my head that would love having some kind of official Easy Allies Disneyland thing happening, but if you're curious of meeting up with Kevin, I love that you go a lot. I'm super jealous. It sounds like you live close, but you can message Kevin DeBolt, possibly reach out to them on social media, or reply to the comment left on one of the previous episodes of Cup of Jones. But thank you for bringing that up, and it'll happen. One of these days, it'll happen. Some kind of Disneyland Easy Allies event. When we have time, which never happens. Michael G, I've heard you talk about your experience with the Scouts and your love of the outdoors before, which made me a bit surprised when you mentioned you weren't a big fan of hunting. Have you ever been hunting? If so, what were your experiences like? If not, is there a reason you haven't? Yeah, I've been hunting before. Small stuff, never been. I have a friend of mine that hunts elk and deer with a bow and arrow, which is so badass. Like, I just think that's really cool. And they are very resourceful. They, whenever they catch a buck, they, that's venison for them for months. That's something that that's food that they have for a very, very long time. They give food out to their friends as well. Is there a reason I haven't? Yeah, it's just not something. It's kind of like surfing. Like I've surfed in the past and I love surfing. To me, it's a little too much time involved in actually making the act like worth it. So I think like the act of actually like hunting an animal might be exhilarating in the moment, but like going to a place specifically to do that with people that are also doing that as well, I think would be a little too time intensive for me to find time for in my schedule. Now when I go to the outdoors, it's pretty much always with Amanda. So it's like that's one of our just vacations of times that we can get away. So I know for a fact Amanda would not be interested in hunting. So if I was to go on a hunting trip by myself, I don't like have any friends that I would go with. It's not something I would sign up to go with a bunch of strangers to do. So I think that's kind of one of the barriers that's always, again, we're talking about politics. I mean, that's like a conversation I'm not prepared to debate as far as like the ethics of hunting, how much hunting should happen. Because there are like, places that say, please come and hunt our things because we have too many of them, or please, like, we'd much rather you come and hunt the things on our reservation, so we can police that kind of stuff rather than going somewhere else and hunting things. So it is a complicated issue. So just speaking from the heart, just speaking personally, don't really want to make that a big topic. Nick Cartwright, what are your thoughts on Shane Satterfield recording and leaking the full audio of the Cyberpunk 2077 closed door demo online? Mr. or Mrs. Laughter47 also asked this question on patreon.com. Patreon hunting goal? Yeah, that'd be fun. I do love bow and arrows, man. So like I think that's probably one of my biggest attractive things to hunting is just like that motion, that sensation of hitting your mark is so satisfying. I'm just okay with doing that with the target. I don't necessarily need to do that with something that's like staring at me. Like, if you missed it, Shane recorded the audio for the Cyberpunk 2077 demo from E3 and then released it, and then got a strike on his channel from on Sifted.net, not Sifted.net, but the Sifted channel from from community CD Projekt Red, and then has since worked that out with CD Projekt Red, and was frustrated, and it created a discussion over whether that was editorially prudent for him to do that. I think our stance on that is pretty clear in that many of us also saw the same event and didn't do that. I don't know if I know Blood took notes. That's pretty remarkable. It's a very dark room. I don't know how he actually would manage to take all those notes. I don't know if Blood can like freehand. That's pretty sweet. But I can understand certainly recording it if you need that for notes later, which is probably why they wouldn't discourage something like that if they saw somebody recording stuff. To me, it was clear when I went to the event that doing something like that would be frowned upon and would receive extreme, a reaction from CD Projekt Red. Like when I found out he had done that, I was like, yeah, that I would not have done that because that seemed very clear to me. But I will say this, and I was talking to some of the allies about that when we were recalling like the good old days back at GT. We were ruthless back at GT. I mean, we recorded things off screens. A lot of times back at game trailers, we did something and then we're like, are they gonna care? Are they gonna care? Are they gonna care? They don't care. Yay! And then we kept it up, and because we wanted viewership on all the stuff that we were doing. We wanted to try to find as many opportunities as we could to get stuff out that other people didn't have. That to us was the win in a lot of ways. And so no, I just had my phone face down on the notepad if I needed a light. Did write a fair amount in the dark. Nice. Good job, Blood. I hope that works out for Shane in the future. I hope that's something that that's not like a stigma that carries around with him and the channel. I hope that's something that doesn't negatively impact his relationship with CD Projekt Red in the future. But at the same time, it is interesting when things like that happen because it is kind of an eye-opening reminder for other people what is deemed appropriate, what publishers are cool with, situations like that might lead to more open discussions in the future when you go to events of publishers being like, just to be 100% clear, just because, we're saying not to shoot anything off the screen, that also means audio. Do not post any of the stuff like that, because one of the issues there was just miscommunication. Nick Ferris. One of my favorite things to hear from the allies is your memories of each other back at GT, or generally outside of content as they've produced. So, with that in mind, do you have any fun stories or memories of working with the allies? Perhaps strange first impressions or funny anecdotes? Sure. I don't know about funny anecdotes. I didn't really write anything down for this. I'm just going off the top of my head right now. One thing that you have to understand that was very interesting was, speaking of Shane Satterfield, when Shane came in at Game Trailers and brought in the editorial team, that was something that I had not considered. That was something that we needed. That was something that changed Game Trailers significantly. That we're going to have this production team, editors meaning video editors, and then we're going to have the editorial team meaning writers, and they're going to be producing the content that the editors are creating. And I was like, oh, right. Like, that's how that should go. And Shane came in, kept bringing in people that he was familiar with, and then bringing in new people like Bloodworth and Patrick Morales and Damiani. And see, I said you first, Bloodworth. I was never really, quote unquote, a part of that team. So for a while, in between Superman Returns and Grand Theft Auto 5, I didn't review anything. I didn't review anything for like 2 years, and I really just focused on features. I would focus on countdowns every week. I produced all of those. I would focus on the retrospectives. I would either play a lot of the games and write those scripts, or work with people that were working on those things. In the case of Final Fantasy, just spreading out that gameplay capture, as far as I possibly could. And so it was very interesting following Shane's departure, and then Jeff Keighley comes in, and then we move from, and then Ryan Stevens kind of takes over for Jeff Keighley after Jeff Keighley leaves, even though he never took the moniker of editor-in-chief, which always cracked me up. And then I'm like, take it, it's yours, take it. And then we switched over to Defy, and Ryan Stevens didn't come with us, and then I made the bump up to editor-in-chief. And so that was very interesting for the first couple of months at Defy, working so closely with Daniel Bloodworth, because we had worked on Backtrack, and we had worked on reviews that he had worked on in the past, and he had been involved in some special features over the years. But all of a sudden we are working so much closer and trying to figure out ways that we can streamline not only the way the Game Trailers had always done what it had done, but how the rules had changed now that we were Defy Media, much more YouTube focused. Definitely wanting to collaborate with Smosh and Clever and Warp Zone and Screen Junkies and all of those other people at the company. And so that was interesting. That was an interesting memory when I think about the people I work with now compared to when I worked with them back at Game Trailers. I was friends with Kyle. Kyle and I would do things together. I would, we wrote the Button, didn't write, but we produced the Button saga together. I did the voice and the puppeteering of Buttons and helped conceptualize the shoots and how a lot of that would go, whereas he wrote the scripts and I edited those videos and stuff. So it was fun to collaborate with him on those. Of course, when we moved over, we collaborated on GT Time when we switched over to doing the podcast ourselves instead of doing Invisible Walls. But it was specifically that Defy switch was very interesting, working with them a lot closer than I had before. Small Leviathan, I know you're not big into Splatoon, but I'd just like to ask you, as a games media veteran, if you've got any thoughts as to why Splatoon is so much bigger in Japan than the rest of the world. Oh boy, I don't know. It doesn't strike me as one of those games that would be extraordinarily popular in Japan, but almost half of the worldwide sales come from there alone. Is it because of the competition in the shooter genre is more popular over there than in the West? Or is the art style have a much bigger appeal to the Japanese audience? I'd be very curious to what you have to say on the matter. Yeah, maybe? I think it might be the art style. I mean, it's a new Nintendo IP, which is so rare. That might be something that people are really excited about. Kind of like how Western audiences were super excited about The Last of Us. You had this publisher that had been producing a very specific, game franchise for a very long time, or why we're so excited about God of War, that it's just so refreshing because it's like, wow, look at what this team has done before previously, and look at what they're doing now. And I wonder if it has that kind of shockwave where they were just so used to expecting more Zelda, more Mario, more Kirby, more Yoshi, and all of a sudden got this brand new franchise. And it could also be that maybe that audience, I know portability is way more common in, there's a lot more public transportation, I believe. I think there's just a lot more people crammed into subways than they are in the US. I hear a lot from people that are in Japan that they spend a lot more time playing games on buses, on trains, or out in the open than typically the audience does. Maybe this culture is changing, but I think in like the Vita mobile, beginning of the mobile gaming era, a lot of that was more prevalent in Japan. And so that's why a lot of people thought, wow, the Switch is going to do work like gangbusters, because a lot of people are going to be playing that on the way to work. And so I wonder if that's it. I wonder if it's not only the success of the Switch, but looking for that exclusive multiplayer, ongoing games as a service, continually being updated with small and large DLC, original IP, and Nintendo really delivered on that front. So I wonder if that is something to do about. I'm going to stop that conversation because I don't want to stick my foot in my mouth, because I do not study Japanese culture well enough to talk more on the subject. Megan Leinert: has any game made you ever cry or feel so strongly impacted that it made you change the way you view things? I love that games can make me feel emotionally vulnerable. It elevates them from entertainment to something more than that. My personal pick is Journey. Definitely made me cry. I cried at the end of Journey. Which made me feel so many things in the spectrum, like sadness, joy, friendship, loneliness, death, and rebirth. It changed me, and I finally saw games as art for the first time. By the end, I was in tears, and I wasn't really sure why. Me too. In the end, when it's like, da, na, 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 and you're like flying up and like you're going towards the mountain, and everything's like, you know, clouds and sunlight, and I was like, yeah, and like, I don't know, you know, it's like Pixar, man. Like, Pixar can elicit an emotion from you in 2 minutes, you know, like they have that. It reminds me of how like Jelly Beans like makes like a little tiny thing taste like popcorn. Like they just distill the human experience down to this really finite point, and they just hit you right where it counts. The music had a lot to do with that. It's a very powerful score. I cried during Life is Strange. I cried. What games made me cry? There's another game that got a little weepy at the end. Might have been some Telltale stuff. All that stuff is more shocking than emotional. Like Walking Dead, I would be like, whoa, as opposed to like, no, that character died. But I hear you. God, there's another one. Yeah, I don't remember. But of course, Eris, like just a lot of P characters dying over the years. I didn't get that far because I haven't played Final Fantasy VII up until that point, but there are classic examples of that. And movies, of course, like the first 5 minutes of Up. Oh, I love people that are just like talking about stuff that didn't make them cry. Did Far Cry 5 story bore you to tears? Haha, no. But yeah, hopefully that's a good example. But I don't mean to like jump on your example, but I do remember crying in Journey and being very confused. And the beginning of Last of Us, every time that just destroys me. And so many moments in Last of Us. The thing I like about Last of Us, having just replayed it, I just replayed it via remastered, which I hadn't checked out, and I finally played Left Behind. It's not just that the beginning of Last of Us is like so sad. It's like the blueprint for the entire game's story. Like, you need that opening to understand what's going on, and I think with Joel, and I think they do such a good job of slowly bringing that moment in the beginning of Last of Us back, that you have characters that are just like, look, I know you're not cool with this, I understand. And it's like, ooh, I know what he meant. I know what that person meant when they said that they understand what he thinks, because I saw this horrible thing that happened to Joel. And so that, while I wasn't crying throughout all of Last of Us, I was still the emotional, the tears I had shed were resonating continually throughout, like aftershocks throughout the entire game. It was very effective. Dre Oracero, what goes into your decision when deciding a game to present in Hall of Greats? Do you take into account every ally's preference and the chance of it succeeding? Are you confident that you can present a great argument? Would love to know your thoughts behind which one you are deciding and why you might not want to nominate a game in Hall of Greats. Okay, so I'm running out of time, so I'm going to push down. Brian Dauta has the next personal question, so apologies, Brian. I will get to yours in the next episode of Cup of Jones. We have 1, 2, 3 more pages of personal questions, so that's not too much to add on. But I want to get into a little bit. I want to give 4 minutes worth of discussion on this topic, because just out of curiosity, and not in response to this question, I did this before, I wrote down a list of all of the times of my games that I have brought to Hall of Greats. And I want to talk a little bit about, because I don't have one hard and fast rule for like what game I bring to Hall of Greats and why, but I kind of want to do, and maybe it can serve, why not? Let's make it today's editorial. We'll do a very quick editorial. Hi everybody, on Hall of Greats. This is Ben Cuppa Jones. We're going to wrap it up very shortly, but real quick, I'm just going to talk about Hall of Greats. I talk about my personal experience in Hall of Greats. Over the history of Hall of Greats, I have gotten 16 votes total over all of it. And it's been a fascinating ride, and it's been really interesting bringing games, having them perform or not perform, and then getting advice, unsolicited always, from the other allies over which games I should bring next and why. And then doing what they say, and I get less votes. I love it. I gotta be perfectly honest with you, patrons of Easy Allies. I am way into the concept of Hall of Greats. I love producing Hall of Greats. I have become disenfranchised just a little bit because I've been burnt so hard on games that I brought. I've brought games to Hall of Greats that I was positive were a lock. And if not a lock, I'm like, at least they're gonna get votes. At least it's gonna be like somewhat competitive. And I found over time that like, oh, okay, only a certain type of game gets into Hall of Greats. I get it. And so in the future, I've really tried to, it's less about making sure a game gets in, because I've yet to have a game get into Hall of Greats. It's more about having my expectations of how I think that game is going to perform align with the game that I want to bring. And so sometimes I bring a game that I want to get into Hall of Greats, sometimes I bring a game that I want to perform well, and sometimes I bring a game like Pong. I just brought Pong for fun. I didn't think Pong was going to get in, but I wanted to talk about Pong. I wanted to, for people that go back and watch the history of Hall of Greats, I don't want us to get 40 episodes in and have that one old school PC gamer person in their 70s be like, where's Pong? You know, and be like, I did it. I tried. You know, I brought it up in conversation. I knew I was going to get in. Maybe I'll bring it up 2 or 3 years down the road once the entire Nintendo library gets in. Cough, cough. But speaking of Nintendo libraries, very first Hall of Greats, I brought GoldenEye 007 for the Nintendo 64, one of my favorite games of all time. I got a single vote. 1. And I believe it was from me. If I recall. I don't know. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I got 1 vote for GoldenEye 007. I think GoldenEye 007, there's no question, belongs in a Hall of Greats. I think GoldenEye 007 is should be in a top 100 list of the top 100 games of all time. I probably will not bring that back. I think if I brought GoldenEye 007 to the next Hall of Greats, it would not get in that episode either. So, cross that one off the list. At the second Hall of Greats, I brought the World of Warcraft, and it got 0 votes. So somebody just brought up now where they were like, I know that Brad and Ben and Huber and other people will of course be playing Battle for Azeroth. Well, those people that you brought up did not vote for World of Warcraft being one of the Hall of Greats. Possibly the single most successful MMO of all time. One of the most like forward-thinking and popular and like inspirational games that has been created in this medium. A game that is still around, that is still selling gangbusters to this day. Nothing. 0 votes. I'm most likely never bringing World of Warcraft back. Ever. Screw it. If no one's gonna vote for it, nobody? If Huber, every single time World of Warcraft comes out with a new game, is like harassing me, like, you're gonna play that, right? I'm like, no, I don't have time, Huber. Like, why don't you have time? What, Jones? Why don't you have time for Hall of Greats, man? Or why don't you have time for World of Warcraft, man? Just play for a little bit. Just create one character, just jump in, we'll get you raid ready, we'll do it. You're not gonna play World of Warcraft? You used to be way into this game. I bring it to Hall of Greats, doesn't vote on it. It's like, all right, okay. So then, I'm like, okay, I'm taking the gloves off. I'm bringing a game that if you look at like most top 100 lists, it is up there. This is a game that is real hard for people to be like, I think that game's poor. This is a game that people have been screaming about a sequel for, that like they're pretty much like dead inside right now as far as like actually expecting it to happen. And that was Half-Life 2. Half-Life 2 got my second most number of votes in any Hall of Greats. I got 5. So Half-Life 2 was a contender, but couldn't make it happen. And so I again was feeling kind of burnt. And I wanted to bring something the next Hall of Greats that I was like, okay, Half-Life 2 is something that people have an understanding of how good it is, but don't necessarily have that personal reflection. Like, I haven't really talked about Half-Life 2 with a lot of the allies. It's something that they're like, yeah, I recognize that it's important and significant and well made, but I just don't have those memories. You know, I just, oh yeah, like I know Brad and Huber played a lot of Counter-Strike, but like that's kind of dodgy to bring up Counter-Strike in a Half-Life 2 argument. So I was like, okay, I understand Half-Life 2. So I'm gonna go in the nostalgia route. And again, if I'm gonna go nostalgia, I'm not gonna bring Ocarina of Time. I'm not gonna bring Super Mario 64. I'm not gonna bring Super Mario Bros. 3. Like, I'm not, like, I recognize that these are big games, but these are Bossman games. These are Damiani games. These are Bloodworth games. Like, these are not games that I can speak from a memory of actually being like obsessed with. I appreciated them back in the day. I recognize how damn good they were, but I wasn't the one replaying Super Mario 64 like crazy. I was the one playing GoldenEye 007 like crazy. Like, so I wasn't the one playing, you know, Super Mario's World over and over again on Super Nintendo. I was the one playing Batman Returns. So like, I'm like, I want to find something that speaks to my memories, my passionate memories of gaming, but it's also something that I'm pretty sure almost everyone within the Allies has played at some point and can appreciate how crazy it was when that first game came out. And that was Grand Theft Auto 3. And that is currently my most voted game. I got 7 votes. I was very close to getting that in. I think that got 3rd or 4th place on Hall of Greats. So I feel very confident bringing that decision. Although Michael Huber was very critical of me bringing Grand Theft Auto 3. He's like, why didn't you bring 5? You brought 3, why didn't you bring 5? Okay, I brought 5, 1 vote. I'm skipping over Pong, but we've talked about Pong. I bring 5 later, 1 vote, and then I didn't see it at the time, but I went back and watched, and Huber voted for it, and when he did, he went, and voted, and then walked away. Like, he was ashamed of his Grand Theft Auto 5 vote. So I'm through with taking advice from people. I'm through with, why don't you bring this game? You should bring this game. Because then when I do that, then I have this idea of like, oh, I got a chance this time. And like, I just want to bring a game. I want Hall of Greats for myself personally to be an opportunity to express why I think not only a game is good, but why it is legendary, why a game is extremely important in the history of this industry, and why it deserves recognition, whether that is because it is in Hall of Greats, or whether that's because I just get this opportunity to pitch it and defend it in front of a wonderful community and in front of a series that we do. But I'm pretty much past the idea of like, please get in, because I'm setting up for a heartbreak. There are some games that people have suggested. They're like, we know what game you want to bring. We know what game you haven't talked about, Jones. Why don't you bring that game? Because if that game doesn't get in, I'm destroyed. It's over. If that game doesn't get in, I probably won't do Hall of Greats again. I'll just be like, what? Are you kidding me? And it's like, yeah, but I mean, somebody brought that other Paper Mario game, and that Paper Mario, have you played that Paper Mario game? And it's like, no, I played other games other than Nintendo games. There are other ones. There are good PC games that deserve to be in the Hall of Greats. There are non-platformers that are pretty great, you know? Like, it's like, So it's messy. It's, and Hall of Greats is always that tricky thing because I want it to be something that we can sweat. I want there to be tension. I want there to be fear. You know, I want there to be stakes. I want there to be a drum roll and, oh, that got in, brah! You know, but at the same time, I don't want to get too worked up about it. I don't want to take it too seriously because I am someone who can easily get wrapped up in that stuff. It's like you're writing things off too soon. Street Fighter 2 didn't get in right away and then got in the next month. It's great. It got in because someone else pitched it though, Blood. I don't think the same person brought Street Fighter back. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to stay online until Blood answers this question. That when Street Fighter 2 did get in, it wasn't the same person bringing Street Fighter 2 back. It was a different ally. So if any of the allies want any of the games that I've just mentioned to get in the Hall of Greats, have at it. Good, just best of luck to you to get to get a vote for World of Warcraft. I invite you. I brought it back after beating it. Wait, I brought it back after beating it? So you brought it twice. Wait. Oh, no, wait. So you beat it, and then you brought it back. So somebody, I think it was Ben brought Street Fighter 2, and then you brought Street Fighter 2 back, and then you got it in. So yeah. I love that Mega Man Legends gets in there every time. One of these days, I'm gonna have to play Mega Man Legends so I can like actually join that conversation. Ben brought it first. Okay, so yeah, there you go. So again, I'm not gonna salty run back. I'm not going back on stuff. If you weren't around that time, if you just decided no, that wasn't your day, and later, oh, okay, yeah, okay, it's a guilt trip. I feel bad for Jones, so I'll vote. I don't need your pity, okay? I don't need you doing something just because you don't want to see me get angry because you're avoiding the rant. Like, I get it. So I'm just gonna move on. I want to keep the conversation going. I don't want it to be a broken record. I don't want to be a speed bump on the progress road to gaming excellence. I want to throw curveballs out there, man. I don't know why. I want you to not know what you were expecting. I don't think people were expecting Grand Theft Auto 5 last time. So hashtag avoid the rant. So I'm not making alliances with people. I'm not doing backdoor shady deals. I'm gonna bring a game I'm passionate about, a game that is truthful. Even though I didn't think Pong was gonna get it in, you'll never have to go against Chrono Trigger again, though. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Secret of Mana is gonna. Oh, that's the game. No, Jones, you understand. Secret of Mana. Oh, it's like it doesn't matter. It's gonna be some other game, and it's just gonna It's like it's not that I didn't like your favorite game, Jones. It's just that they brought this game, and I think that's deep down. And that's the thing that I want to challenge the other allies. That if you go back and you look at the stuff that I voted for, I have frequently voted for things I'm very unfamiliar with. And that's what I invite the other allies to do. It's like when stuff gets into Hall of Greats, I always see oh, okay. It's the game they played, whereas I voted all the time for they just made a great case, or yeah, I didn't really play that game, but I always wanted to, and I can totally appreciate, or yeah, I played it once, but I don't really remember it, but man, they made a great case. That's not my favorite game of all time, but yeah, that probably deserves to be in Hall of Greats. Whereas I feel like a lot of the other allies are and my favorite 3, boop, so again, if that's the case, I'm not going to beat myself up too much. I'm not going to set myself up for the emotional crushing disappointment of putting myself on the line, putting my heart on the table, having it stepped on. So if I'm going to put my heart on the table, I'm going to be able to take it back, put it right back in my chest, and go on to the rest of my life. But I still have a couple months. Who knows? I do not have a lock for what the next game I'm going to bring for Hall of Greats. No, Michael, I will not. I will not. It's too much, man. I'll be split in half. My emotional entrails will come pouring all over this rug, and I'll have to clean all of that up. Yeah, so there you go. There's a little. There you go, Blood. Blood is always curious about what the topic of the show is going to be. You can say that I did a little brief post-Comic-Con wrap-up, and then we talked about Hall of Greats a little bit, but that's going to have to do it, because I'm going to go to a very fun preview event right now, and I'm very excited. So, thank you so much, everybody. Tonight at 6 p.m., we're going to be playing Mega Man Legends, the Mega Man Legends collection, which I have installed, ready to go on my PlayStation 4. I will be back probably just before 7 o'clock. I'll pop in, and then, of course, I will be on the podcast tonight. And then shooting Trailer Jones tonight. We're going to do a post Comic-Con wrap-up of Trailer Jones. So hopefully that will go up as soon as possible this week. And other exciting things are going to happen. So Mega Man X Legacy, the Legacy Collection. There we go. Mega Man X Legacy Collection. There's 2 of them. At least I have 2 games that downloaded onto my PS4. So check those out tonight. Twitch.tv/EasyAllies. We'll see you then. Thanks for watching, everybody. Cheers.